across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk here. Welcome to the home of common sense. Thank you to Julia. She's back tomorrow at 10 o'clock. So the Prime Minister insisting he was given no cause to disbelieve Lord Mandelson. This is just getting laughable, more laughable by the day, despite publicly available information showing that the peer had stayed at one of Epstein's homes while he was in jail. As Labour MPs lose trust, are we at the end of Starmer's reign? Can he hang on? Should he resign? We'll look at that in more detail shortly. Also this afternoon, Rupert Lowe's independent rape gang inquiry is currently ongoing, running from the 2nd of February for 10 days with the intention of justice, including private prosecutions where appropriate. It's not being widely covered, this. We're going to be looking at it a little later in the programme. And Donald Trump is expected to approve Sir Keir Starmer's Chagos deal after the PM offered him extra security guarantees. The US president is understood to have changed his mind after intense lobbying from British officials and members of the American intelligence community and new pledges to protect the US military base that is there. We'll bring you more on that as well. Everything you need to know. All the breaking news right here on Talk 0344 499 1000. So here's the thing. What does all of this Epstein stuff say about the Prime Minister's decision-making abilities? Let me just take you through a little bit of a story here. This is what Keir Starmer said in September.
The ambassador has repeatedly expressed his deep regret for his association with him. He's right to do so. I have confidence in him, and he's playing an important role in the UK-US relationship.
So there it is. I have confidence in him. That is absolutely key to this. Now have a listen to what Keir Starmer said yesterday at the same dispatch box just a few months later.
To learn that there was a cabinet minister leaking sensitive information at the height of the response to the 2008 crash is beyond infuriating. And I am as angry as the public and any member of this House. Mandelson betrayed our country, our Parliament and my party.
Within 16 weeks, he changed his tune on this, and today he was full of sorrow.
I want to say this. I am sorry. Sorry for what was done to you. Sorry that so many people with power failed you. Sorry for having believed Mandelson's lies and appointed him. And sorry that even now you're forced to watch this story unfold in public once again.
No, sorry. What are you, supercharged half-wit? What's wrong with you? I'm sorry, I didn't know, his lies, etc. This is really easy. I keep hearing people say, well, when he found out the truth, he was very, very quick to sack him. 5 o'clock in the morning he woke up and fired him. Yeah, that's how good he is. Hang on, a forensically skilled barrister. His entire skill set is based on a forensically analytical approach to all matters legal. That's Keir Starmer's DNA. That's his career. He knew Mandelson had kept up his friendship with Epstein. He knew this. Keir Starmer is surely on death row now. Should he resign? Today, he says he's sorry for believing Mandelson, and as many people have said about other leaders, this is a man who's now in office, but not in power. Look, let me crunch this down for you. It's really, really simple. Mandelson is staying at Epstein's apartment in New York back in June 2009. Peter Mandelson is staying in Epstein's apartment in New York in June 2009. At that exact time, Epstein was serving an 18-month prison sentence for soliciting prostitution of a minor. The case involved underage girls, some as young as 14. Here's the crucial bit. At this time, Peter Mandelson was Secretary of State for Business, a senior member of the government. Perhaps even more crucially, he was also the first Secretary of State. That is, the most senior cabinet position after the Prime Minister. Is anyone seriously, with a straight face, telling me that when a politician of that level of seniority and responsibility nips over to America for a trip, no one knows where he's staying? The Cabinet Office, number 10, even the security services, a senior number 2 in position in the UK government, they don't know where he is. They knew where he was. The timeline was already there. Epstein's in jail. Mandelson is staying in his apartment. Epstein's in jail for crimes against children. Mandelson was the de facto Deputy Prime Minister and also, crucially, the Business Secretary at that time. Not maybe a little bit before, possibly a bit after. No, at that time. They all knew. Everybody knew that. So when the job came up for the big gig over there on Capitol Hill as the ambassador, what would it have taken to do the basic security checks? If you speak to anyone who's worked around Westminster, who's gone through the security checks that you have to go through, not in all positions, but in quite a lot of positions. I mean, it's beyond, to say it's thorough, hardly touches the side. You know, people you'd forgotten you ever knew might be questioned about you, your past, what you're up to, the places you go, your interests, etc., your circle of friends, their circle of friends, and even their circle of friends. I mean, it's big stuff, this. So we have a security service that is onto stuff. When you're the business secretary and the second in command in the British government, it would be beyond belief that someone didn't know where you were staying if you nipped over to another country. Beyond belief. So that timeline was there for all to see. It wasn't hard to find. So when he went for that big gig, didn't somebody go, well, hang on, what's the Epstein connection? Oh, well, yeah, he used to be a friend, but he's not a friend anymore. OK, right. But you were friends with him when he was in jail for crimes against underage children. Right. Yeah. How did that not get asked? Did it not get noticed? Are we meant to be generous here and say, well, Keir Starmer and the others, they forgot that bit? I'm not believing any of this. Should Keir Starmer now resign? I'm giving him till 4 o'clock this afternoon. 0344 499 1000. Let's get a word on this and the other big stories of the day. Peter Barnes is back with us, the political strategist. Good afternoon to you, Peter.
Good afternoon, Ian. I thought that was one of the best monologues and best summations of this thing I have heard all day, if not for the last week. I have to admit, I think you nailed it on every single point. The idea that nobody knew where this guy was, what he was up to, is just preposterous. It's utterly preposterous. I mean, I'm one of those people that's been through this kind of security clearance. It's not nice, and it makes you, trip to the doctors, and that particular procedure seemed rather pleasant, like a handshake. It is not a very nice thing to do, and I tell you right now, it's thorough beyond thorough. So the idea that they didn't know half of this stuff, again, preposterous. Yeah. What we're going to see now is the fact that the role of the Cabinet Office actually be presented to the public as basically it's the Prime Minister's little office, basically. It's the one that he gets to control. More importantly, it's the one Morgan McSweeney controls. And that's where that's where the rot seems to be coming from when it comes to this. How did they not know who was asking what questions were asked? It's all stemming from that department and from that man. And I think, I know you said till 4 o'clock. The thing is, though, I don't want him to go over this. I want him to go over the damage to the economy. I want him to go over the damages to pubs, to jobs, to everything else this man has done. I actually think this is weak compared to the damage and I think the generational trauma that he's inflicted on this nation. And it is infuriating that yet again was talking about Peter Mandelson. I thought he's like Bloody Mary. You say his name 3 times and he just appears in a mirror. It's ridiculous. I mean, the guy in Wetherspoons could have told you he was not fit to be the US ambassador, but without any of this stuff, his back record of being fired from cabinet 3 times is quite impressive in a way. But what they call it, the Prince of Darkness or something. It's more like little. I mean,
the clue was in the name, wasn't it? He was known as the Prince of Darkness, the Svengali of Westminster. I mean, it was all kind of there. What is interesting about this resignation thing? I was talking to a couple of guys this morning about this. Of course, the problem is. There is a possibility that as much as there is a kind of national appetite to get rid of Keir Starmer, as you rightly said, Peter, it's largely for other reasons. But the problem could be that they replace him with someone who's more electable than Keir Starmer. So opposition parties may have to be careful what they wish for. Getting the scalp of a Prime Minister is beyond bullseye territory. But if somebody comes along and they're actually kind of a bit better than him, that could be a problem.
Oh, it could be, but we have a very lucky situation where we don't have anybody better than him in the Labour Party.
That's
so
true.
There's that, you know, at least working on our side. You know, there is a silver lining to this. But I have to admit, Angela Rayner played an absolute parliamentary blinder. Like, she knocked it out of the park on this one. The Tories got right up to the goal and missed it, because what they forgot to do was in this humble address, where basically you bind Parliament into making a decision. They forgot to kind of give the other option of the Cabinet Office looking after the kind of the document release and what should be public. They forgot to say, oh, well, maybe another people should do it, which is the whole point of a humble address. They messed this one up. But Angela Rayner, she weaponised that situation. She swooped right on in there. I think she had an idea what was coming. And, yeah, she won the day. She didn't stab him in the back. She looked him in the eye. And I thought that was a very key moment, I think, in British politics, is the moment of, I'm doing this because you tried to get rid of me, and I'm just better at this than you are. That's what that was. It was the Godfather, don't go against the family line, and then, leads him, take the gun, leave the cannoli kind of situation. Because I tell you now, I think he will survive this purely because they need a sponge. They need someone to soak up all the drama, all the bad election results till May, and then they'll defenestrate him like a Russian billionaire.
Well, we will see. I was just thinking, actually, the West Streeting Angela Rayner ticket, which people on the left keep going, oh, it's the dream ticket. I mean, some people have a very funny idea of what constitutes a dream team, don't they? I mean, West Streeting and Angela Rayner, for God's sake, well, anything.
It's a sleep paralysis team,
frankly. Yes, it's something like that.
Dream.
I mean, I know Streeting is younger and he's a bright guy and he's a little bit more accessible. I don't know whether we can talk of political brilliance when we talk about West Streeting. I think there's a perception that comes beyond the reality on this.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I will say, though, with Angela Rayner, I know Mark Dolan has been banging this drum, and I've actually come round to it, actually, that she is a very effective politician. She's just not very good at running the country. I think that's the big difference. Is she is a very capable communicator, surprisingly. She's actually kind of personable. She's a real person. She feels authentic. She has that kind of Nigel Farage factor, the Boris Johnson, the Jacob Rees-Mogg. They are an embodiment of what the party is supposed to be, and I think that's where she will probably scoop up a lot of support in the not just in the Labour Party but also in the country as well. I don't think people should write her off too easily, because I do think that, again, that kind of anti-reform ticket of tactical voting, all these factors could work in the Labour Party's way in a very traumatic bit of history for the country. But this is what happens when you don't the two parties, they don't collapse, they shatter. So you've got so many other different fragments everywhere. Any narrative at the moment could end up being the next party in power.
Let's move to this story, Peter, because there's a lot to be said about Starmer. We are asking that question, should Keir Starmer resign? 03444991000. What about this one? Official documents have revealed how Lucy Connolly had her prosecution fast-tracked for the approval by none other than Lord Hermer. The case was treated as an emergency charging decision under which specialist counter-terrorism prosecutors secured consent for her prosecution from Lord Hermer's office within 12 hours of asking for it on a Friday night. Let's have a listen to what Lucy Connolly said when she was released.
To all the people that, jeering that I was sent to prison, think it's a good thing, think it's funny, hope that they broke me while I was in there, but I'm here to tell you that they didn't.
Have you been Keir Starmer's political prisoner?
Absolutely. Different officers do it different ways, but they can really hurt you if they want to, and they decided on that day they were going to really hurt me, and I mean really hurt me.
It's interesting. Now, of course, people can have all sorts of views on Lucy Connolly, Peter. I don't think in that moment she was particularly bright and certainly not very pleasant. I haven't frankly changed my mind much on that point. Certainly she should not have gone to jail. She did plead guilty to something, and now she feels she's sort of uncovered a Watergate moment, although I have to say she wasn't the only person that found herself in the fast-track route.
Yes, and I think that's the key detail, is it's not a one-off. So I think that kind of political prisoner narrative breaks down pretty quickly. What you can argue, though, is why on earth were they moving, you know, like the end of the earth for these particular crimes and these particular trials, but yet when it came to the chap at Glastonbury, they missed the deadline. You know, there is a procedural
They missed the deadline.
problem,
How did that? Yeah.
They missed the deadline for terrorism charges, which Lord Hermel would have known about because he has to sign off because of the severity of the charges. And yet, you know, Ed Kneecap, that's his name, like, you know, the Lucy Connolly was fast-tracked. Everything had to go through. They used emergency powers under terrorism legislation to be able to have these kind of decisions done. I mean, I find that the most interesting bit of this, purely because I think you're right that the political prisoner narrative breaks down. What you can do is you could say that it's abuse of systems and it's abuse of the kind of the severity of terrorism and, you know, the importance of we make sure we get that right. The government didn't get that right, but they got Lucy Connolly right for writing a tweet. I think it's priorities. I think it is and just a terrible moment yet again for British politics where I just don't believe they didn't know. I don't believe nobody at the CPS or at the Attorney General's office said we should probably do that bit of paperwork, because that's all it is. It's like a few forms to fill in. You know, it's just to say that they've read it, they've approved the charges, and the trial could go ahead. That is it. I do not believe an office full of supposedly very clever people didn't think to do it. I just don't believe it.
I guess with the Connolly case, and there's dozens of others that were in this ballpark at the same time. It was a little like 2012, wasn't it, when the London riots were happening, and the same thing, there was these fast-track, I think night courts were sitting. One fella got 18 months for nicking a bottle of mineral water. I mean, it was like, the whole point is to show an example. That seems to be what it is. We've got, the last thing any government wants is public disorder in a riot form. It's almost the greatest of nightmares for a government. And so they have these kind of, I mean, you could call them show trials in some respect. I mean, they're genuine trials. The fact that Lucy Connolly pleaded guilty and went on trial, I have no problem with that. Going to prison seems unbelievable, and going to prison for 31 months seems even more unbelievable for that. Not defending anything that she wrote, but the speed with it. These are meant to be sort of deterrent trials in the midst of public disquiet.
Yes, definitely. And Keir Starmer wanted to use them after the kind of summer riots as a kind of, I'm the Prime Minister, I'm the law and order guy, I'm going to take this on, I'm going to crack heads and get it all sorted. Unfortunately, the Prime Minister, being the Prime Minister, put his foot right in it and made a mess at every single step of this. So is it going to be interesting to see where Lucy Connolly goes with this? Because I have to admit, when she came out of prison, I wasn't really aware of her at all. And I thought she'd be this kind of meek little housewife character. She's not that at all. She's a political animal. She knows the game. She's very aware of the media and the narratives that she can create. I do find it interesting, though, that she won't be eligible to stand for election, but the guy who was involved in a Yemen terror plot, he can. I think that needs to be looked at the next possible moment.
Well, he was a good guy, you know, in charge of a terror plot, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
There's bad terror plotters, there's good terror plotters. You know how it is. Stay with us, Peter. More stories still to come. We'll talk about Shabana Mahmood as well. Boat crossings, that's back on the agenda too. It was never off the agenda, frankly, is it? Details to come. 03444991000. Should Keir Starmer resign? Lines are open. 1:20. This is Talk.
Many in public life, many journalists, many commentators, including me, said at the time this was a mistake and he was the wrong man to job.
Being self-righteous.
Nothing with hindsight.
This is
Nothing
not,
with hindsight.
This is not about
He's
Keir
a
Starmer.
nasty little piece of work. He's a wrong un. He's a proven liar. He was best mates with a paedophile. He thought that was okay. He didn't believe the girl who'd been solicited for prostitution. And you're happy to be mates with him. I don't think he's fit for public office.
Nor do I.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 24 minutes after 1 o'clock. Peter Barnes is with us, looking at the big stories of the day. What about this one, Peter? This is Shabana Mahmood, refusing to guarantee small boat crossings will drop by 2027. Let's have a listen to her being questioned at the Home Affairs Select Committee.
Another year will have gone by. Will you be confident in numbers going down by then in all the different measures that you've just talked about?
I would love to be in that position. I can't guarantee I'm going to be in that position. That's because the measures will take some time to come into effect.
If you aren't confident the numbers aren't going to go down, are you confident that the rise won't be as steep as this year?
I'm confident that we'll have made progress on changing the law and clamping down on some of the ways in which the asylum system as currently constructed frustrates removal of people from the country.
Are you saying you're not confident the numbers will go down?
I'm confident that the measures that we've announced will have an impact and start to bring numbers down. I can't give you a timeline of exactly when all of that will happen.
Yeah, there it is, Peter. I can't give you a guarantee. And there it is, essentially reiterating the point.
I'm going to do something very unusual. I'm going to defend Shabana Mahmood.
Oh, get out of here, Peter Barnes. What happened to you?
I know.
What happened to you, man?
I had too many soy lattes. But no, unfortunately, the reality is she is right. She can't actually say whether she can or she can't. The point of that entire question was that answer, is this story. Yep. The people are using the select committees, using these meetings for clips, fodder, for campaign lines and all the rest of it. However, what I will say is Shabana Mahmood, I could tell you right now the numbers won't come down in a dramatic fashion because she hasn't done anything.
Correct.
This is announcement politics. She is selling process. This is what the Labour Party have got down to an absolute perfection. I mean, it's like an art form to them at this point, where basically what they do is they just kind of sell you, well, we're going to do this and we're going to do that, and oh, we'll have a consultation period, we'll have an inquiry, we'll do this. So it is the image and the kind of the outlines of doing something. We have no substance to it because that would require a decision, and the cabinet is basically paralysed because it can't get anything past the back benches. So it's all a bit nonsense, really, if I'm being honest. And I've said this about Shabana Mahmood from the very beginning. She is not the right person because she doesn't know how to do anything. She knows how to talk it, but we don't have doers anymore. We don't have people that actually act. We find action so much of a kind of allergic reaction to it. It's one of the reasons everything's kind of falling apart, really.
Yeah, I think it is. And there is, of course, a way that she could guarantee pretty much that boat crossings would go down, and that would be if you made the place less attractive for people coming over on boats. So if you genuinely thought that the moment you arrive in Dover, you were going to put on a coach and taken to one of the many islands off our shores, and you'd be given a roof over your head and kept warm and nobody would attack you or anything. If everyone thought they were going to live like that for the next 3 years, I promise you the boats would calm down the following day.
Yes, definitely. But you also have to remember you've got to not pay people to be deported. I think that's another thing that we keep getting. We keep paying people to be. Yeah. So even if you do want to come and you get deported, you get some money out of it at the end anyway, which is probably more than what you would have earned in the year in whichever country you came from. So it's a win-win either way. And I think this is the big problem. The Labour Party do not have the gumption, the political capital, or the will to actually do what is necessary at every single stage of this problem. And it's why everything is escalated, because nobody wants to do anything. And the Conservatives were just as bad, and I expect whoever's in the next government to be just as bad, because it is about action, and unfortunately we don't have action people anymore.
We don't have action, this is true. Let's move to this story then. I know Julia was talking about this a little earlier. Merlin Entertainment. Now they're the people that run some of the biggest UK's attractions, Alton Towers, Legoland, Windsor, Thorpe Park as well. They've now changed the rules for accessing the queue for disabled people, so there'll be no more ADHD or anxiety passes handed out, which means we might see less situations like this.
Why are there now 3 people at the front? Sir, if you could just get... They've pushed in! We've spent over an hour queuing specifically for the front, and they've pushed in! Sir... Get them off! Get them off and make them move!
Yeah, the in-betweeners, never letting us down, of course. Make them move. I genuinely saw a situation where people were complaining about... I was in a queue at an airport, coming from Malaga, coming back to the UK, and Katie Price was in the queue, at the front of the queue. And people were going, look, she's got to the front of the queue, because, look, she's at the front, just because she's famous. And those people were moaning. And I kind of looked at the front of the queue, and then I realised she had her son there in a wheelchair, which is why she was at the front of the queue, because you are literally asked to get to the front if you've got a wheelchair. But, of course, it doesn't stop people having a little bit of a whinge nonetheless. This is all about, I think, too many people who have ADHD and anxiety or possibly even autism. Of course, if you get a pass, you can go to the front of the queue. Some would say, well, it was really designed for somebody with one leg, you know, who might find it a bit irksome, waiting for an hour or more to go on the monkey swings. So that's the purpose of it, not somebody who's got gentle anxiety. So I think the sense is that it's been not so much abused, but there's just too many people with that condition.
Yeah, it's the basic principle that if you make something unique or special and then you suddenly have everybody having that thing, it is no longer unique. So therefore, the faster queue just becomes as long as the original queue. So it doesn't really, it defeats the point. But this is, like you say, a problem of overdiagnosis, and I think it is the problem of spectrum. So basically everybody's got something, so therefore everybody is entitled to something. So I think this is the real problem. It's one of these unintended consequences that nobody ever thinks about. But actually, I do think what we're starting to see is people with genuine disabilities actually losing out again and again and again because of overdiagnosis, because of people who, you know, I always say they just had a bad day, want a free car and an emotional support llama. I think, you know, that mentality has to stop because we don't have resilience, we don't have risk in our country anymore. And I think it's a big cultural problem. And I actually think Merlin have done the right thing here. It's a sad thing, but it's a consequence of a society that just indulges itself.
Yeah, and I also think, you know, the problem is I don't think people were, because you can have sort of paperwork to say you're autistic. I think many people were just turning up saying, my kid's got ADHD, without any kind of evidence to that effect, and I know that's a tricky one. The park says demand for digital queue passes had risen sharply in recent years, meaning the system isn't working. The CEO, a fellow called Rob Smith of Alton Towers, said guests with anxiety and ADHD will instead get one free essential companion pass, and affected visitors are directed towards sensory rooms and quiet spaces, while eligibility is assessed via their system. So that could well be the case that they kind of need to double check it. Some people will be perturbed by that, but I sort of get it a bit. Listen, Peter, we're out of time. Great to see you again. Thank you for being on with us. Peter Barnes, political strategist, with us on the programme. Over to you. Should Keir Starmer resign? It's a straightforward question, but it's also a very serious one as well, given what we are dealing with here. Sebastian Salek, the Labour councillor, will be with us in a moment, along with Benedict Spence. They'll both chew the fat on this one. Should the PM be gone by 4 o'clock? Lines are open. This is Talk.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
I think the Prime Minister is in the thick of it here. Genuinely, I think there's a big problem. He's apologised for believing Lord Mandelson's claims over his links to Jeffrey Epstein, even though this was essentially public knowledge by this point. Bookies now say the Prime Minister is odds on to go this year. Will he go by 4 o'clock, though, this afternoon? We like to set a 4 p.m. deadline if we can. Let's have a listen to what he said this morning.
I want to say this. I am sorry. Sorry for what was done to you. Sorry that so many people with power failed you. Sorry for having believed Mandelson's lies and appointed him. And sorry that even now you're forced to watch this story unfold in public once again.
Keir Starmer speaking this morning, but will he be gone by 4 o'clock? Let's speak with Benedict Spence, political commentator, and Sebastian Salick, Labour councillor, Waltham Forest, and commentator as well. Afternoon to you both. Sebastian, 4 p.m. is the deadline. Will he be gone?
Oh, unlikely, Ian. It would rely on the papers having been published. I think that's the real flashpoint that we're looking for next in this story. And then the big question is, what's in them? If it turns out that Starmer's been lying all along, he knew everything, yes, OK, he's going to be toast pretty quickly. I would suspect, though, that the fault would lie with Mandelson, who, look, has done awful things. He's lied to his country, he's lied to his party. Yeah. And
Keir Starmer knew about it.
Yeah, well, this is it. This is it. This is what we will find out when those papers...
Well, I can tell you now, he did know about it, because I knew about it, so he must have known.
Well, that's it. He knew as much as the rest of us. The question is, did he know about all of the stuff around the Brown era and all of the new stuff?
He knew that he stayed at a paedophile's house while he was essentially Deputy Prime Minister and the business there. So he knew that, and that would be enough to surely preclude you from getting the job as ambassador. So Starmer's got to go, right?
What I'm curious about, Ian, is why this clamour didn't happen at the time. I mean, look, when he was appointed, there was a lot of harking back to his resignations during the Blair and Brown years. There wasn't so much focus on what we all knew about Epstein.
Some people hadn't joined the dots, perhaps, but of course, you might think that Downing Street Security Services would have done. Benedict Spence. Look, I'd love him to be gone by 4. I doubt whether he will. What's your overall take on this? Sebastian says, let's wait for the papers.
Well, he's not going to be gone by 4. He probably won't even be gone this week, to be honest. I think there's every chance he might end up surviving well into this year. But that's simply through intransigence. There's nothing else. He's, managed to ride out quite a lot of scandals already up to this point, quite a lot of misfortune. I think when you'll know that he's in real trouble is when he pushes Morgan McSweeney first. And Morgan McSweeney will be the one that's pushed first, because especially when it was leaked, of course, that Starmer actually preferred the idea of having George Osborne as ambassador to the United States, which, is not exactly a ringing endorsement of his judgment either, but still, it was put out there that that's the guy that he really wanted rather than Mandelson. And it was McSweeney who pushed for Mandelson. Well, right there, that's the name on the death certificate. That's the man who's going to be made to take the rap for this. But once the key guy is gone, well, then it is just a matter of time. Everybody's sort of gone to great lengths to say that McSweeney is the architect of this administration, that he's the brains behind it. Well, once he's gone, then apparently there are no brains behind it. But it will also have to go back to what you're saying. It doesn't matter, really, whether or not the papers are published, what it is that the Prime Minister says he knew, whether or not that can be corroborated. The fact of the matter is, all this boils down to, the Prime Minister said he didn't know that Mandelson was friends with Epstein to the same degree that everybody else in the English-speaking world seems to have known. And then the question is about judgment. Should you have made somebody who was friends with a convicted paedophile ambassador to the United States? Most people at the time said probably not. It's when you've got Labour MPs, backbench MPs, also saying, no, this was a mistake, that he's toast.
And that's the issue, Sebastian, isn't it? That there are people on your side that are saying he should go. I'm assuming you would like him to stay.
I'd like him to stay as Prime Minister because I think we need continuity. We've had this discussion before. I think it's in the best interests of the country, whatever party you support, to have a Prime Minister who sticks around for more than 2 or 3 years. God knows, I can't remember the last one who did that.
Well, just because of that desire? I mean, does that mean you would ignore anything because of your desire for continuity?
Of course not. And as I say, look, if the papers come out and it turns out that Starmer has been lying to us all, then of course his position is untenable. You're not completely bulletproof as Prime Minister, but we do need somebody who can enact an agenda, and that's what we haven't had since Cameron.
But
really.
it seems, Benedict's quite right. Morgan McSweeney is likely to go. Would you concur with that? I mean, let's remember Morgan McSweeney, right-hand man to Keir Starmer, but very, very close to Peter Mandelson. And arguably, and as Benedict said, there were other candidates, including the former Chancellor George Osborne, which we understand Mr. Starmer preferred. But somehow McSweeney managed to shoehorn his best friend in there, and Mandelson got the job. Now, that doesn't say much about Mr. Starmer's judgment, does it, if he was swayed by an underling?
I don't think it's necessarily being swayed. You make these decisions as a team, and just because you start out with one candidate who among us has never gone through a hiring process where we've decided on one person and ended up with another one. Now, look, I don't want to defend Mandelson at all because I don't think he's worth defending. But he was chosen for a job that he was, by all accounts, very good at. So in terms of selection for the job, they probably made a decent choice. The problem is all the baggage that came with him and the awful, awful stuff he's attached to.
But it's that one bit, Benedict Spence, of staying at Epstein's house, June 2009, in his apartment in New York. At the same time, Epstein's serving an 18-month prison sentence for soliciting prostitution of a minor that's involved underage girls, some as young as 14. At that specific moment, Mr. Mandelson was the business secretary. He was also the first Secretary of State, which is the most senior position, of course, next to the Prime Minister. It is beyond belief. It's impossible that no one knew where he was staying at that time. So, number 10, the Cabinet Office, no, we don't know where Peter's gone. He told us he was off to the State. I mean, it would be ludicrous that no one knew. So that was a matter of record somewhere.
Oh, absolutely. And the simple fact of the matter is you have to sort of take at face value what has been put out into the public realm. Do you believe Peter Mandelson? No. Do we therefore believe that the Prime Minister, who would have had access, or should have had access rather, to substantially more information than the average member of the public, do you believe it when he says that he took it at face value? You have to say, well, either he's blisteringly stupid or he's lying. There's only two ways about it, ultimately, and both of which, I think, preclude you from being able to continue on as Prime Minister. We already know that all of this information was known to the security services, even if it wasn't all known to the press, and that does include the British security services. So if there was nobody in MI5 or MI6 saying to the Prime Minister, listen here, actually there's a little bit you might want to know that might come out. If that didn't happen, obviously that's a breakdown in communications, but I sincerely doubt that it didn't happen, in which case they had that information and they decided not to act on it. We've also had Gordon Brown come out and say that he raised his concerns with number 10 and he was ignored. Lord Glassman has come out and said he raised his concerns with number 10. Yeah. He also did it in public. He did it on the BBC and he was told to be quiet. None of this stacks up, and as I say, goes back to it. Either the Prime Minister is lying or covering for somebody in his administration who will therefore have to go, or he's a half-wit. I don't really care which one it is. That person shouldn't be Prime Minister.
Yeah. And Sebastian, when Mandelson was looking around the situation's vacant columns of his local newspaper and saw this ambassador job pop up, he would have thought, OK, I'm going to need to obviously do my best to convince the Prime Minister that I'm good at this. There's this Epstein thing, so I'll run over that. And the fundamental question, of course, was what was the relationship with him? Mr. Starmer said yesterday that he was aware that he had a relationship with him, and he was aware that that carried on after we knew a bit more about his kind of criminal activity, etc. So the fact that the Prime Minister knew that, or this specific date that I keep talking about, June 2009, how do you imagine then, if you are sort of defending Starmer, how do you imagine that bit of it, that specific bit of information, would not have been on Starmer's desk? And if it was, what do you think the thought process would have been that would have led the Prime Minister to ignore it?
Well, the suggestion from number 10 is that Mandelson just wasn't honest during his vetting process. But
even if he wasn't, they knew about this. They knew he was there at that apartment at the same time that Epstein was in jail. So they knew that bit. What possible answer could Mandelson have given to somehow convince them that there was nothing to see here, even though he was staying in a paedophile's house?
The reality is that I don't know and none of us know, and that's why it's so important that we see these papers, because we have to know the truth. Transparency is the key word here, and that's why I'm holding off making any judgments until we see those, we see what really went down, and I will make a pretty firm decision either way, whether this Prime Minister should carry on or should leave, based on the outcome of those papers, because that is where the truth lies here.
Yeah, Benedict, I wonder if it was a case of schmoozing here, where Mandelson had said, yep, I was there. You've got no idea how many other people were there. Most of them are in Donald Trump's cabinet right now, including Donald Trump himself. Look, this was just a thing. We all knew him. We all hung around. We didn't like him. We just stayed there because he had information that might be useful to us. Do you imagine it was something like that?
This has always been one of the arguments, isn't it, that ultimately Mr. Epstein was able to insert himself into many echelons of various different societies and make himself important, and therefore he was somebody that you couldn't do without. I don't believe that for a second. I think that he certainly did make himself important, but you're under absolutely no obligations to go along with the game. I also think, given that this was already becoming a scandal, it was already a massive scandal before Mandelson was made ambassador to the United States, it wasn't a good enough argument, because as much as anything else, as much as you say, you know, and it is true that there are many figures within the Republican hierarchy who are embroiled in this, it was also one of the key campaigning points of the Trump administration. We're going to release the Epstein files. It's going to come out in the wash sooner or later. Even if it was selective, that was always going to increase the danger that something like this came out. So to have just gone along with it and assumed, oh, nothing could possibly come of it, for the Starmer administration is just colossally stupid.
Yeah, absolutely. On that point, Benedict, thank you very much indeed. Benedict Spence, political commentator, Sebastian Sadek, Labour councillor for Waltham Forest. Thank you, guys. Great to have you both on. Thoughts from you, 0344 499 1000. That's a really good point that Benedict just made, because during this time, we knew the Epstein files were going to come out at some point. Now, did Mandelson not wonder if he might be on them? Did he not say to the Prime Minister, look, actually, I mean, maybe he thought, well, they're never going to have my emails on there, surely. He's probably thinking the Epstein files were going to be sort of some unfortunate photographs, maybe the odd diary date for lunch at a Washington or a New York restaurant. But they won't have my emails from 15 years ago. Well, yeah, they did. But anyone would have wondered that. So even that point, that these files were yet to come out, you might have thought that in itself would have been, well, we'll wait and see, Peter. If you're not in the files, then maybe it's OK. But if you are, but even without that, without the files, the system, number 10, security, the police, whoever, knew the date of June 2009. They knew that. Why was the business secretary, why was the first secretary to the British government staying in a paedophile's house while the paedophile was serving jail time for abuse of underage girls? That would have been information they could have got. The rest, we didn't all know that back then because we hadn't correlated the full timeline. We didn't necessarily know. I can't remember the first time we found out that he stayed at his house. Darryl says, I don't want Starmer to go. I want Labour gone. What's the alternative if Starmer goes? Miliband, Lammy, please, no. I don't think it could get any worse than what we have now, but I think it's possible. It could be possible. Could be the other side of that, though, because there is a school. If you vote Reform or Conservative, it doesn't matter who they put in the job to replace Starmer. Wouldn't make a jot of difference. OK, you're still not going to vote for them. But if they put somebody like Wes Streeting in, who I think is supremely underqualified for that job, just by dint of how long he's been around, although that hasn't stopped others in the past. But he is a bright guy. He's a bit more accessible. He's, sort of, I know it's the working class thing again, but he really does come from that background. And he's, a little more on the level of sounding a bit normal. So it would probably raise Labour's profile positively if somebody like Streeting was in there. So getting rid of Starmer may well improve Labour's position in the opinion polls, and that's a bit weird. So opposition parties have got to think carefully when they call for the scalp of the PM. because you might, in fact, be bolstering the popularity of the government that you deride on a weekly basis. 0344 499 1000. We'll have more from you in just a couple of moments. We'll go straight to the phones after this on Talk.
Many in public life, many journalists, many commentators, including me, said at the time this was a mistake and he was the wrong man for the job.
Being self-righteous.
Nothing with hindsight.
This is
nothing with hindsight.
This is not about
He's
Keir
a nasty
Starmer.
little piece
This
of
is not about
work. He
Keir
is a
Starmer.
wrong 'un.
It's
He's a
not about the
proven
bit.
liar. He was best mates with a paedophile. He thought that was okay. He didn't believe the girl who'd been solicited for prostitution. And you're happy to be mates with him. I don't think he's fit for public office.
Nor do I.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
I tell you what's interesting, when Gordon Brown, who never liked Peter Mandelson, but brought him back into government when he became Prime Minister, that one manoeuvre gives you, I think, everything you need to know about I suppose, the kind of mesmeric nature of Peter Mandelson. Because that would have been Brown thinking, I don't like this guy, but he's going to be good. And he's going to be good for us. It also wards off the, we're not an anti-Blairite new government, because they'd fallen out as well. And I think the same thing happened with Starmer. And Morgan McSweeney convinced the Prime Minister, no, he's definitely right for the job. I mean, look, you might not like him, Keir, but look how good he is. He's an operator. Yeah, but I've got all this stuff about, he stayed at a paedophile's house. Oh, don't worry about that. Everybody stayed there. It's fine. Oh, OK, Morgan. And off they went. This is the Prime Minister, for God's sake. Chris in Bournemouth. Help us out here. Chris, what are you thinking?
I spoke to you yesterday, Ian, and told you that he knew more than he was letting on.
Go on.
All right? Now, he's now going to hang Mandelson out to dry. And I'll tell you now, Mandelson, with his big gob and getting everything that he deserves,
I mean, that's always a possibility. I mean, you might think if he wants to retain the tiny amount, the crumb of dignity that he might have, that he'd keep his gob shut.
I don't think he will, and I don't think the man's got any scruples, to be quite honest with you.
Well, he's got nothing now, because, I mean, I know everybody says it every time he's been fired or removed or whatever, you know, you can't come back from this, and he always does. But I genuinely, I think it'll be fair to say, Chris, he can't come back from this, can he?
Well, he's going to prison. Without a shadow of a doubt, he's going to prison.
You think so?
But I don't think he's going to go...
I think that's it's going to be really hard to get him in a courtroom, let alone a prison.
I think it's going to be really hard to find out where he's going to be, because there's going to be people around that will want his head.
Well,
and as regards...
Perhaps. I mean, he's got a lot of enemies out there, that's for sure. Probably more than friends.
And as regards Keir Starmer, no, I don't want to resign. I want him to call a general election.
Yeah. They never do, though, Chris. They never do. Good man, Chris. Thank you for starting us off. The trouble is with that whole idea of criminal offences in public office is that it is quite hard to prove, oddly. And you think, well, it shouldn't be, because the evidence is there. Would that evidence even be admissible in a court? You've got to remember, you'd have to authenticate that evidence first, because the Epstein files have come out, and there's loads of stuff in there, just by the way they collated it, that won't be true. It doesn't need any help convincing anyone that this is already abhorrent, horrific, disgusting criminality. But there's lots of other stuff been thrown in there. So the lawyers of Mandelson would say, well, you've got no evidence that that actually was said. There's a copy of an email, prove that it was... Things like that will be the first thing out the trail. And the police will go, well, yeah, how are we going to prove that? Where's the actual paper trail? These are the issues they'll be dealing with. Mark's in Cambridgeshire. What do you reckon? Starmer gone by 4 o'clock, Mark? Good afternoon.
Hello, how are you? Not quite 4 o'clock. I mean, this is incredible, isn't it? It's like a real-life traitors unfolding before us. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, I'm loving every minute of this. But 2 quick points I want to say. No one's mentioned this. The reason, in my opinion, Mendelsohn was given that job by Starmer was as a thank you to McSweeney for getting him the top job, without a shadow of a doubt. That's why he was so blinkered about the obvious facts that were put in front of him. It's a thank you to McSweeney for getting him to be leader of the Labour Party and subsequently the PM, without a doubt. And that's why he won't sack him, because I think that will come out. And secondly, and then I'll be quiet, if, as Starmer keeps saying, he wasn't aware and Mendelsohn kept lying, and we know that he would have been vetted, why isn't there a culling of the security forces?
Yeah.
People should be sacked left, right and centre. But again, he won't sack them because the truth will come out that they did tell him. And to me, Starmer now is completely cornered.
He's completely cornered, but of course, what does he do now? Because, McSweeney is the man that advised him to hire Mandelson, but ultimately it was still Keir Starmer. I mean, what does Keir Starmer say? Oh no, I was convinced by someone else. He's the Prime Minister. He's meant to be strong. It's his decision.
Well, to be fair, he's always blaming someone else, so it wouldn't change things, would it?
Well, it wouldn't change things, but it would be an admission of ineptitude, wouldn't it, on Starmer's part?
Well, I think the way it's going, that will actually unfold and it will prove what we all know, that the guy is completely inept. I think it'll just be confirmation of the confirmation, if that makes sense.
Well, there's no way. I mean, when you're the Chief of Staff in Downing Street and you were the person that was the cheerleader for a friend of a paedophile and everyone knew about it, then, and it's like all of these things, it's the lying that makes the difference. Plus, I mean, that's one aspect, but the messages of spilling secrets, if you want to look at it that way, to Epstein. Plus, there's that. And you were the chief flag waver. He's got to go, McSweeney, hasn't he? He can't stay.
Of course he does. But I don't think Starmer will sack him. I think he's scared to sack him. I think he was scared to sack Mendelsohn, but he had no choice. I don't think he wanted to. but he had to, and now he's going through that whole process again. He daren't sack people that he thinks are so close to him, because maybe what they might tell, who knows?
Well, who knows indeed, Mark. Thank you for that. This comes from Dan in Kent. Afternoon, Ian. If Starmer does go and the final decision is down to the members of his replacement, it would undoubtedly be Rayner. But if it's down to the 415 Labour MPs, it will probably be Millipede. Glum either way. Can you imagine? And your choice this week is Ed Miliband or Angela Rayner. Really? Well, that's the choice. Those two? Yeah. Wes Streeting has a lot of support, but he also has those who can't stand him in the Labour Party as well. Tricky times. Should Keir Starmer resign? 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, the Prime Minister might have said sorry, but he also insisted he was given no cause to disbelieve Lord Mandelson, despite publicly available information showing that the peer had stayed at Epstein's home after and during the during the prison sentence after the conviction. Labour MPs have lost trust. Are we at the end of the Starmer reign? Should he resign? Will he be gone by 4 o'clock? 0344 499 1000. Also this afternoon, Rupert Lowe's independent rape gang inquiry is currently ongoing, running from the 2nd of February for 10 days with the intention of justice, including private prosecutions where appropriate. What will happen here? It's not something that's being widely covered, curiously, but we're happy to look into that, and we'll speak with Samantha Smith in just a few moments. And Donald Trump is expected to approve Keir Starmer's Chagos deal after the PM offered him extra security guarantees. The US president is understood to have changed his mind after intense lobbying from British officials and members of the American intelligence community, and new pledges to protect the US military base, which is there. It's a curious, I can't work this out. The Americans endorsed it, then Trump said it was a lousy, terrible thing, it's a bad thing to do. Now he's going, yes, fine, actually, it's absolutely fine. 0344 499 1000, that is where you'll find us You can leave a voice note there as well, and you can message 87222. Pumpkin says, we are sick to death of all of these lying politicians. They won't accept the truth. Be tough on them. Don't let them get away with it. Well, they kind of... Trouble with politicians, they don't... There's a couple of things here. They don't think they're lying. That's the problem. If they think they're protecting something, but for the greater good, there's that thing that... It's going to sound really poncy when I say this. Plato, yeah, you know, him, Plato... talked about the noble lie. The noble lie, which is, well, you know, you're allowed to tell a lie. If the small people are, you know, are none the wiser, it's fine. The noble lie makes sense. You've done it for the greater good. And I think they're all, to a greater or lesser extent, in the same ballpark. So somebody like Jacob Rees-Mogg, who was often accused of that kind of approach, you know, well, here in the Cabinet, we've made a decision and I can't talk about this. And people thinking, you know stuff, you know, you're just not saying it. Because I think he would have thought that his kind of disposition as perhaps a posh boy kind of bought him something extra special that the rest of us don't have. But the old daft lefties on the other side are no better. They just sort of do it in a different way. And I think we see this with this particular story of Jeffrey Epstein, which is just, I mean, it's kind of beyond belief. And as we've said all week, you put this in a book, nobody would believe it. It would be seen as it's so laden with hyperbole, it couldn't possibly be true. But this one actually is. I want to move to this story, and of course very much about child abuse. Rupert Lowe's rape gang inquiry currently ongoing. This started 3 days ago, and it runs until the 10th of February. We're not hearing much about it. We're not hearing loads in the news. There's not much of it. There's bits on social media, but it's not gained, I think, the momentum that I thought it would. Now, I know that it's not being talked about by Rupert and his team until after, and one would assume after they've got some firm conclusions. But there are still people around, thankfully, keeping their eye on what's going on. Let's speak with Samantha Smith, grooming and sexual abuse survivor, who we've spoken to many times before. Samantha, nice to have you with us again. I mean, just on that specific point, I know you keep your eye on this kind of stuff and in this area of I mean, just the most devastating and horrifying stories. Are you aware of any reason why it's not a little bit more public, as many of us might have thought?
It's the unfortunate reality of celebrity versus working class. You know, the Mandelson and Epstein files release, I think, has really trumped anything going on domestically. And unfortunately, it is a nice distraction. As uncomfortable as it might be for Keir Starmer, it has served as an excellent distraction from the failures that have been going on home turf for decades.
And home turf for decades has not been the nicest terrain for what we're about to talk about here, the rape gang inquiry. This has largely happened, Samantha, I think it's reasonable to say, that because of really the ineptitude of our systems that they've had some inquiries, and within those inquiries there has been information which, you know, thankfully we now know. Lots of information, however, we don't know. Lots of unanswered questions. Government saying, yeah, don't worry, we've got an inquiry on its way, but God knows when that's going to happen. And people like Rupert Lowe, the independent MP, said, you know, we're not hanging around for this. We need to get to work faster, and essentially raised 600,000 quid, crowdfunded it, in order to have an inquiry. Now, it obviously won't look as big, but nonetheless, it is set to be rather thorough. What are you hearing, what are you seeing about what this inquiry is setting out to achieve and what's happened so far?
Well, you're right in making that distinction, that this is not the government-led inquiry. This has absolutely nothing to do with Labour, nor can they take any credit for it. In fact, it happened in spite of Labour. You know, as you said, Rupert Lowe, Sammy Woodhouse, various other activists and survivors came together independently of the government, seeing them once again dragging their feet, and crowdfunded a huge amount of money to hold this independent inquiry. I'm also part of an inquiry, LLC at the moment that's looking at bringing private prosecutions against local councils, politicians, police officers, senior ranking officials who knew about, aided, abetted, or turned a blind eye to child sexual exploitation. So the majority of movement on Pakistani Muslim grooming gangs is happening outside of government, outside of the halls of Westminster. Rupert Lowe is obviously acting as a free agent, but it is so important to say that everything that is happening right now is thanks to the voices of survivors, the action of whistleblowers, and the sheer momentum of the public. Those in power still continuing to do what they have always done, which is turn a blind eye and pretend that the problem doesn't exist.
Yeah, and this, of course, went through so many parts of our system, didn't it? From education to social work to council workers to clinicians, even to law enforcement. I mean, it was all literally no part of the system at some point. Clearly not everybody within it, but it was these systems that let kids down when they should have been the very areas that actually saved them.
Absolutely. Growing up in Telford, I remember that grooming gangs, I'm about 25 years younger than Sammy, give or take a few years. But I remember growing up in Telford, my experience mirrored hers and mirrored the thousands of other girls that were living in and suffering in towns like mine. It was almost treated like a cautionary tale and a hazard of living in the area that you lived in.
So was it talked about then as, I mean, I know you've mentioned things before and we have to be careful what language we use, I understand that, but was this in your cohort, your age group, was this quite public knowledge that this was a possibility, that you could find yourself almost captured in some shape or form?
Absolutely. I mean, there was a running joke when I was younger about a local taxi service that every time they had a Pakistani Muslim grooming gang scandal, whenever someone was arrested for raping a little girl, they would rebrand and change their name. We were told the kebab shops and takeaway shops not to go to, the areas that we should be careful in, the various haunts that these men would frequent. And again, it was treated as this sort of integrated part of the community, where it was unfortunate reality of living in Telford that these predators were prowling and that young girls needed to be taught how to keep themselves safe because those in power wouldn't do it for us. It was very much desensitized and normalized to the extent that, little girls being raped and abused and groomed was just part and parcel of everyday life. And even 20 years on from when other survivors were first experiencing this.
Given that this isn't the official inquiry, but it has been put together with the very angry and connected voices that are sensing, and some have lived, this injustice and this horror. So to me, it's incredibly authentic in that sense. I don't think we should dilute its authenticity just because it's not the official inquiry. They seem to be talking to a lot of witnesses and hearing all sorts of statements, and it is powerful stuff. And just looking at the Twitter feed that is out there for people to see some of the comments, I know, Samantha, you would have seen them as well. I've seen you tweeting or posting on X on this as well. These are deeply disturbing things that are being said. Putting that, nonetheless, to the front of the debate is crucial. But what happens to it? What happens after this? It's all very well to say, here's a victim, or here's a former police officer, here's somebody who worked in social services, they've got a lot to say on this, big revelation coming up. Where does it go?
Well, this is more of I think, a fact-finding and expose mission than anything else. As you said, the actionability of the independent inquiry is far more limited than anything that the government can do. But what it will do is, in an unfiltered way and without the usual pomp and procession of Westminster, put the facts and reality out there. And I think that, if anything, is more powerful than a national inquiry at this point would be, because again, we've seen before the way that those in power are able to cover up and dilute and whitewash what has gone on. The only times when we've seen real actionable change is when it was independent inquiries. For example, the Crowther report in Telford, that was touted as a model because of its independent nature, because of the fact that there were no punches held back. And so the fact that this is preceding any government action, I think, will make it far harder for them to crawl into their holes and hide away from the scrutiny.
Indeed. Well, let's speak again, Samantha. I know there are still another 5 days to go of this inquiry, but appreciate you, as ever, being on with us. Samantha Smith, herself an abuse and grooming survivor. This is reference Rupert Lowe's rape gang inquiry, as it's called, and if you're searching for it on X, that is the unfortunate phrase, rape gang inquiry, because that is what it is. Currently ongoing, been running for 3 days now. This is into its 3rd day and due to run for 10 days. It's setting out to find some justice, but certainly I would argue whatever the authenticity of an unofficial inquiry is, doesn't mean to say it's no less powerful and could still land a few punches on the establishment. It keeps the narrative alive. This was something we hadn't seen really before. I mean, now we've known for a good few years, and we learn almost every day about the size and of these gangs, and that, of course, is only part of the story, because the other bit of the story, and this is the, when I see people say, yeah, but was this more white paedophiles, and well, we're talking about grooming gangs here and disproportionality and trying to find the commonality in that. But of course, what marks out these particular offences is the cover-up. That's the problem. That's the absolute distinction. It's not a minor distinction, by the way. It's a flipping huge one. It's the cover-up. It's the idea that kids were ignored, that kids would, had statements withdrawn because they were pressurised in doing it. It's the idea that whether it was the old Bill or a social worker, whoever it happened to be, was either turning a blind eye or felt that it was a little bit iffy to get involved. I don't want to upset these particular guys, might get done for a bit of racism. It was all of that. That's the distinction. And that's, again, when we talk about commonality. So this is a very specific tentacle of abuse, and it's big. And everything we talk about on this show, and every time I hear more people contribute who know this area, they will say it's big and it has not stopped. Let's go to Dan in Hampshire. We're back to that issue. We began with, should Keir Starmer resign? I wonder where Mandelson is as well, Dan. He's not been seen. If I was him, I'd have legged it to a beach somewhere and hiding under a rock.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, I wanted to talk about this Starmer and Mandelson, but actually what you were just talking about.
I'll tell you what, Dan, stay where you are. We're going to get you back on a better line. Your phone line is knackered. Let's go to Chris in Hereford. Chris, what have you got for us? Hi.
Hi. I think, to be honest, Keir Starmer should never have appointed Peter Mandelson in the first place, to be honest. He should resign because the simple reason is he made a critical error of judgment here. Because Mandelson had a bit of a shady past as well. Apart from the Epstein affair, he's got a checkered past, and I think it looks really, really bad in the Labour Party. This could finish the Labour Party.
It really could. And either Starmer didn't know about it, which is bizarre. If he didn't know, that would be a wider problem than just Starmer. I mean, how could somebody not have given him the information that Mandelson stayed at Epstein's house while the bloke was in jail? I mean, that would have been known.
Well, exactly. As I said, it seems to be a bit strange that he didn't know anything, sort of thing. But as I said, it just really looks really, really bad on the Labour Party, and what happened, whatever comes out with the Epstein thing, yeah. and I truly believe you're innocent to be proven guilty. He has, to be honest, I know he's got to stay. He has to stand trial or whatever sort of thing. But if a lot of these things get found out, it's just going to absolutely destroy the Labour Party. And in the next general election, people will not vote for this
Yeah, well, I don't imagine loads of them are going to vote for them anyway, but this, you're absolutely right. This certainly will not help. Great call, Chris. Thank you very much indeed for that. I'm trying to remember. In fact, I say I'm trying to remember. I don't think I can. We heard this story that Peter Mandelson stayed in Epstein's house while Epstein was in jail, right? We all knew that. But I'm trying to think how, firstly, 2 points. I can't remember when I first read that bit. And I can't remember whether that was like a year ago or 4 months ago. Bizarre as that sounds. There's been so much information around this. But the bit that hadn't really been joined up, because the first time I heard that, I remember thinking, well, this was Peter Mandelson, you know, he wasn't in government at the time, he was a free bloke to do whatever the heck he wanted, so a bit weird, but, it's he can stay wherever he wants. But suddenly we realised that actually, no, he was a senior member of the British government while he was staying there. And again, the timeline, it's trying to remember the timeline. Now, it doesn't really matter whether I can remember when I remembered it or you can remember when you remembered it. What is important is that somebody somewhere in Downing Street, in predating Starmer, of course, security services, the business department, right? He's the Secretary of State for Business. They must have known where he was staying at that point, and that would have been a matter of public record. So it wouldn't have taken much to work that out. I'm surprised it didn't come out at the time when you think about it, that Peter Mandelson is staying in Epstein. How did that not come out at the time? I mean, separate from anything, just the fact that the business secretary of the British government was staying in the empty house, might have been a couple of other stragglers there, I don't know, of Jeffrey Epstein while he was in jail. I mean, that would have been a belting front page. 0344 499 1000. Little bit of breaking news. MPs and peers have been presented with options to restore the Palace of Westminster. The cost of doing this is up to almost £40 billion. Did I read that incorrectly? No, it is £40 billion. £40 billion. Knock it down. Go to the Crucible in Sheffield where they put the snooker on. It's got lovely corridors. Very ornate, big crowd control area. Get it going over there. In fact, don't knock it down, but it might fall down. That's the trouble. It is it's just over here from where I'm sitting now, almost behind me and to the left. It's a beautiful building. It's incredible. God knows what it costs to keep that thing going. I mean, the leaks and the brickwork and the mortar. £40 billion. Is that worth taxpayers' money to restore Parliament? 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Simon says, Rupert Lowe is 100% correct. It's a rape gang. Wish you would get him on the show. We've had Rupert on many times. He was on as recent as about 2 weeks ago. While this is going on, he's unable to talk until this is over, and I would assume certain conclusions have been drawn. I think there's, for reasons of victims and keeping within the parameters of respect of privacy, while also simultaneously trying to get in. There's all of that to consider. And certainly the way they've chosen to put this together is that they will wait until they have, one would assume, some conclusive documentation that they can share. But we did speak to Rupert this morning on that very point, and he will come on once this is complete. Peter in Sussex. Peter, what have you got for us? Keir Starmer, is he off or is he staying?
No, I don't think he should resign. I think he should be fired, to be honest. I watched the whole of the debate yesterday.
Yep.
Unhappy wife with me doing it, but I watched the whole of it, and every single MP on the other side, apart from the odd one, Greens maybe, that actually wanted him to go, by the sound of it. I mean, from my point of view, the situation was I actually watched the parliamentary dispatch box when Starmer came on yesterday morning, and he actually said, we did do all the due diligence, but we thought we would take the risk. Well, I don't know whether you know what the definition of risk is, but it's the uncertainty and possibility of an adverse outcome and damage occurring to a result from the specific action or event.
Yeah, and if you then factor into the chemical experiment, the words Peter Mandelson, then one would assume that possibility of an adverse reaction is increased. So you might say, let's not do it. But they went, no, let's do it.
Anybody in their right mind wouldn't do it. I mean, I actually said to the wife when I saw it happen that the fact he was given the US ambassador's job, I said at the time, the man's a liar. He's been fired twice. The bloke was an absolute idiot. I mean, at the end of the day, what on earth was he doing? And I said that to the wife when he was made ambassador.
Yeah, well, I think they thought that, bearing in mind the administration is Trump's administration, Mandelson has been a fairly slick political operator, a supreme campaigner, very seductive character. Clearly they thought, they fell for it really, I suppose, Peter, because he was genuinely at time, for the Labour Party, he was great for them at the time. And I think they just thought, it's such a good cocktail that it's bound to work. So it's a bit weird, but it's bound to work. But they ignored some pretty disturbing facts about Mr. Mandelson's past.
Well, I get all that, and I think everybody knows about that apart from Keir Starmer. But the whole thing about it is that everybody seems to have forgotten the fact that he actually said that on the dispatch box yesterday morning. It was worth taking the risk. Don't believe that nobody else had brought it up on your show, to be honest.
Worth taking the risk, yeah. Great.
I mean, that's what it's all about, really. But no, he shouldn't resign. He should be fired. Like, the bloke is an idiot, as far as I'm concerned.
Indeed.
Anyway.
Listen, great to have you with us. Thank you, Peter. This one from Eric, who says, Trump had a relationship with Epstein. Where does Trump stand? Are you banned from talking about this? Why would we be banned from talking? It's so funny, isn't it? If there's something you haven't once said. So, are you banned from talking about this? No, first I've heard about it. Not that he had a relationship with Trump, whether he had a relationship after knowing about what he'd done. Trump's position has always been that once he realised he was a wrong 'un, then he legged it. I can't quite read the info that you've given us, Eric, on this. I can't quite see the message that comes from the Epstein files, but one assumes. And here's the thing. I absolutely expect there to be evidence that Trump knocked around with Epstein after it was obvious he was a wrong 'un. Now, his conviction for being a wrong 'un was in 2009. And Donald Trump should be held to the same account. If he was still inviting the fella around and going for drinks with a man who was clearly a wrong 'un, then he should suffer the same level of scrutiny that Peter Mandelson is now under. Taff in Dover says, afternoon, Ian, isn't it disgusting that Rupert Lowe's inquiry is having to be held at all? Surely this should have been done by the government without any restrictions and judge-led witnesses under oath. Well, there is one coming, but when it is, we don't know. They had trouble, of course, appointing the chairman. That was a problem. They finally have got that sorted out, but there is sort of rumours out there that it might not last. They might end up with a different chair of the. Is that the right phrase? It is the chair, isn't it, of the committee? And how it's done, it's going to be lengthy and it's going to be costly. And you would hope, bearing both of those factors in mind, it will therefore be incredibly thorough. Lee is in Somerset. Is the Prime Minister about to go, Lee? What do you think?
He should go.
He should go. Yes, indeed. Is that all you wanted to say?
No. I don't think he should resign. He should not resign. He should be sacked.
Yeah.
Just like Hugh Edwards, that pedo.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was allowed to resign, and we're now paying his £200 a year pension, £200,000 pension. Yeah.
Yep.
So why should we pay for failure? Keir Starmer has put his foot right in it, and now, I'm sorry, resign. No resignation.
Yeah.
Sacking. The king should do his duty.
Well, I mean, I would say it's a bit more than just an error of judgment, bearing in mind what's at stake here, isn't it? If he'd ignored the fact that when Peter Mandelson was 13, he went shoplifting in Boots or something, we wouldn't be quite so harsh on this. But the fact that it involves such horrific, depraved, horrendous crimes with numerous victims takes it to another level. Lee, I hear you. Thank you very much indeed for that. Should he be fired? Should he be sacked? Could he walk the plank? 0344 499 1000. I'm also grateful to Chuck Thomas. This is just by way of a bit of light relief. Everybody in the control room went, why is he talking about Chuck? Chuck's one of our producers here, produces Plank and Grumpy Old Men and all of that. And Chuck put a post out on social media talking about the listening figures that we've got for what they call Radar. This is how they judge across the whole industry, which radio stations have done well. And we have had, as a station, and this goes way back from last October to now, just an incredible increase in listeners, and that's amazing. Thank you for that. And if you're new in the last 3 or 4 months, brilliant. Here on the afternoon show, again, we've got so many more people. I can't remember what the percentage is, like up 30% or something from the last time they looked, something of that order. 39%, I've just been told. And that's fantastic. And thank you to everybody who tunes in. I know that's, these are all cliches, but it's true. So in the last 4 months, the station has grown ridiculously, and that's brilliant. Anyway, my reason for mentioning this is Chuck accompanied his tweet with that, what's it called, that thing in America where they've got all the Mount Rushmore, where they've got all the presidents carved into rock. And he's kind of got an image of all the talk presenters sort of carved into rock. Now, look, everybody, when somebody goes, is that a good picture? They only ever look at themselves, don't they, really? There's like 10 of you in the picture. Is that a good picture? What you're really saying, is it a good picture of me? So I'm judging this on me, and I don't think it is a good picture, because I think I look like a cross between Matt Damon and Rolf Harris, and I'm not convinced that's a good combination. Obviously not the latter. Do you know what I'm saying, Sam? Sam says Gary Lineker. See, Julia looks like Julia, Jezza looks like Jezza, Kev looks like Kev, Mark Dolan looks like Mark Dolan. I think I am the least looking of that lot. Would that be fair? That is fair, yeah. In fact, the more I look at it, it doesn't look anything like me, which is a bit weird. Anyway, thank you for all those new and, of course, existing listeners to the station. 0344 499 1000. That is where you'll find us. 25 to 3, this is Talk.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah, Kaz says, didn't want to say it, but now you've pointed it out. That's referenced the... that's referenced the Mount Rushmore image that we were just talking about. 0344 499 1000. Let's just move to this story, because we did touch on it a little while ago. Donald Trump expected to approve Keir Starmer's Chagos deal after the PM offered him extra security guarantees. I can't imagine what could have been offered. Let's speak with Jean-François Nelan, who is founder of Chagosian Voices. Jean-François, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian.
So here we have another kind of change from the president. Started out thinking this was a bad idea, then it was a good idea, then it was a bad idea. Now it's a good idea again. How do you feel about this, and how do your fellow Chagosians feel?
Well, we feel a bit nervous on this, and besides, don't think there's any official announcement from the White House. It's all coming from down the street. Let's say that the U.S. president is going to go along with that deal again. But we know from previously, do we believe any words what this Labour government is telling us? I know there are two US officials is going to Mauritius on the 24th and the 25th of February. Why the US is sending them to Mauritius if they are going to be signing the document imminently?
So do you, I mean, I hate to say this, but do you feel that this is the end of the road for your campaign?
It's not. Finally saying this, I was in the parliament yesterday when the Human Rights Committee was here. Yeah. And Philipson, the Prime Minister's best friend, he was here as well. And I did say to him, after when he came out, and I said, you should tell the truth. His word to me was saying, do you believe in the truth? And I did say to him, giving the island to Mauritius will not erase the Chagosian issues, will stay there by giving this island away. We will carry on fighting for this. It seems like what Labour government is doing, it's killing democracy. He keeps saying, oh, the people from Greenland should be decide about the future. But what he's doing here, he's not giving us a chance to decide our future. He's stopping people from from having election in the country. Where's democracy there?
Well, indeed, and that is the fundamental point here, isn't it? That you guys have had no say. It's quite interesting to hear Keir Starmer and others talk about democracy and fairness and people having their say, something they've completely forgotten when it comes to Chagosians.
Yeah, like I say, I don't know. He's supposed to be like a lawyer, like a human rights lawyer. Where's the human right of Chagosian?
Yeah, it's kind of weird, that, isn't it? I mean, that's the interesting, the greatest contradiction, as it were, that, you know, he, and along with Herma and others in his administration, they're meant to be all over this kind of thing when it comes to the rights of people and individuals, but for some reason have spectacularly forgotten you guys. I hope your campaign continues. I hope you're able to, you know, get into some of those arguments with the voices and the people that matter. Jean-François, thank you for your time, sir. Really appreciate that. Jean-François Nelan, who's the founder of Chagosian Voices. An extraordinary situation. Don't know what Donald Trump's playing at. I mean, you wouldn't trust Donald Trump out the back chopping wood. We all know that. And on this, it's another sort of reverse ferret thing. You think, what's it? What? Like, you know, in a couple of weeks, Keir Starmer has promised him security guarantees. What does that actually mean? That means he gets everything he wants but doesn't pay for any of it, and we're going to pay for everything. Give something away without... It's going to cost a lot of money to give it away, and we're also going to give them some money on top of the money that's going to cost. And then on top of that, we won't ask the people that actually live there what they think about this. I mean, it's off the scale. Bananas, this one. This one said, why is the media ignoring the fact that Mandelson isn't the only example of Starmer's failure of judgment? Sadiq, Dodds, Gwynn, Rayner, all had to go in disgrace. I don't think it's being ignored. I mean, they're all discussed at the time. I mean, there's a big old... I don't know about Sadiq, what Sadiq Khan's got to do with Starmer, but there are lots of examples, as you correctly say, and we cover them and shout them from the rafters every time they come up. Phil in Great Yarmouth, congratulations on the rise in viewing figures. You are the housewife's eye candy, that's why. Say hi to my Mrs. Nikki. You are her favourite. Well, I'm seeing her this evening, Phil, so I'll say hello to her face. So that's a job. Yeah, I should say listening figures. Okay, there is some confusion. Lots of people watch on YouTube, or they watch catch up on YouTube, or they watch the clips on YouTube. But when people talk about the battle of the YouTube, we are a radio station. Okay, we are judged only on radio and connected devices. So radio listenership and connected devices like your phone or your TV, whatever it happens to be. So there's that. But yes, we are a radio station. So we're not in competition with, the kid that opens football cards and has 5 million views on YouTube. That's a true story, by the way. The kid that opens the football cards. Imagine that, being 17. Is it you, Finn, that knows someone that does something like this as well? I know Ryan, one of our other producers, used to work on this show. He's got a mate that pretty much does literally that and never got to work in his life. Sits there in bed, opening cards. That's it. You've got, to make that worse, just to make you more miserable, you've got kids who do that, opening toys, like that Ryan, another Ryan, kids opening toys. And they've got like 12 million, and I think I'm right in saying on YouTube, isn't it? It's those families, isn't it, Finn? The kids, all the kids stuff on YouTube is the stuff that is off the scale. And as long as you're getting, 500,000 people a day watching you, you can earn a good living out of that kind of thing. But yes, so in answer to that viewer-listener thing, as a beautiful addition to the package that is Talk, you can watch us and you will see clips that are cut up in Vision. But yes, we are measured solely in listeners, a radio station. I have to keep reminding people of that from time to time. 0344 499 1000. We're going to be opening some football cards soon as well. Stand by for that after the next break. Steve is in Staines. How you doing, Steve?
Yeah, fine, thanks, Ian.
Good.
Yourself?
Yeah, what are your thoughts?
Good. Yeah, well, I was thinking Mandelson's not yet been charged with any offence, so he's free to travel abroad.
He is.
Therefore, what's stopping him from doing a runner to a country which doesn't have an extradition treaty with the UK? And I wouldn't put it past this government to actually arrange this to avoid him being brought to justice and spilling the beans on others in the high-power positions, both past and present.
Yep. Well, do you think... it would be extraordinary if he hid, wouldn't it, in exile in some kind of way, so he wouldn't get caught.
But he's such a slippery character.
Yeah.
You wouldn't put it past him. And as I say, I'm sure the government would like him to disappear.
Yeah. Well, they might do, but would he run from the law, though? Do you think, Steve?
Well, if as people have been talking about, he could get a maximum of 20 years in prison.
Yeah.
What do you think he might do?
Yeah, but running away. I mean, could you live a life like that, Steve? Laying on a beach somewhere, knowing that you're quite safe.
I think he's the type of person who would actually do that. I really do.
Well, he's 72. He's got a few quid. Yeah. If you thought you could go to an island somewhere and live in paradise, the trouble is you'd have no life, would you? Really? You'd be free from Parkhurst. You'd have no other life.
I can't really see him enjoying prison. Could you?
But I'm told. And who the hell knows? I'm told that the bar is like ridiculously high to try and get a conviction in this area.
that I don't know if he would want to stick around and face all the embarrassment. But
yeah, that's true. Could there be any more? I mean, I wonder. I mean, I'd like to think, or I would imagine, journalists have gone through most of the stuff in the current drop of the Epstein files, but there might be some other little fun. We've already seen him in his underpants. We've seen him in his bathrobe. We've seen little Petey, as he was known by Epstein. We've seen him writing emails and messages.
Absolutely, but don't get me wrong, I'd like him to sort of stay here and face the music. I just wouldn't want him to sort of escape the country and not face justice.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
Like everybody else.
100%. Yeah. Great point. Steve, thank you very much indeed for that. Let's get a voice note. This comes from Batman, also known as Gavin, on Peter Mandelson and Starmer.
Keir Starmer is sorry, is he? Well, that big long speech he gave out this morning, why didn't he just give that speech yesterday with PMQs? And will he be gone by 4 o'clock? I doubt it. He was going to be gone before Christmas. Before that, he was going to be gone before the end of the summer. No, I think he's in, mate. I think he's going to stay until the end of his term, until he gets voted out. I think that's what's going to happen. Absolutely shameful, the state of politics in this country at the moment.
It is shameful. I kind of, you know, you're right, it's not going to be gone by 4. We just like the idea that we put everybody on the clock till 4 o'clock who should walk the plank. But you never know. Morgan McSweeney I will be surprised if when we come back on Monday morning... Oh, no, why do I keep thinking it's Friday? I'm absolutely convinced it's Friday. When we come back on tomorrow, well, I'd say, yeah, possibly tomorrow, I think Morgan McSweeney will be gone, for sure. He's the Chief of Staff. He can't hang around. He was the big flag waver, the advocator for Mandelson to get the job in America. They all knew he was a dodge pot. They knew his connections. They knew that his connections came after knowing what Jeffrey Epstein was all about. And stayed at his house, been over this a load of times today. So we kind of know all of that already. So he's going to go. He has to go. Can't keep his job. Starmer himself took the advice of this man. This man was Mandelson's best mate, so they were good chums. So that's how that worked. And Starmer rolled over and took his... Apparently, Starmer wanted George Osborne to be the ambassador. But he took the advice of McSweeney and ignored the evidence that was there in front of him. 0344 499 1000. More from you on the way. Plus, Voice of Doom, Day 11, I think it is, coming next.
Hello and welcome to Talk Down the Local. Tonight,
We're at McCafferty's in Epsom in Surrey.
Raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of this desperation. I think it's almost a plea for help.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Suits, and that's about it. Actually, I quite like Suits.
People coming to the pub and drinking 0% alcoholic drinks, they're still coming to the pub and doing trade.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going, but I have 0% beers, and I feel
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
John in Sutton says Starmer should not have wasted any time on Mandelson the second he knew about any ties with Epstein, past or present. It's very poor judgment by Starmer. I think that's a great point, isn't it? That even if everything was in total innocence and you knew somebody before they were convicted, you might just have to go, do you know what, on balance, you've got two candidates there, all right? You've got two candidates, they're both good for the job. One of them used to knock around with Jeffrey Epstein. Let's assume it was before we knew anything about Epstein. You would still go for the other candidate just in case, right? You go, oh, you know, long friendship with this guy. I know it was before we all knew he was a bad one, but on balance, that's the one. I'll give the other guy the job. Let's do that. We talk to Peter in just a second. Let's do Voice of Doom. It's day 11. Remember, this is the mystery voice. The question is, can you... slightly rhythmic tone to that. The question is, do you know who this is?
This is your chance.
Remember, you're looking for a politician. They could be young or old, left-wing or right-wing, dead or alive. It is not Rupert Lowe. It does sound a bit like Rupert Lowe. Who is this?
This is your chance.
This is your what?
This is your chance.
Ah, right, OK. This is your chance. 87222 if you think you know. Do not phone in. We'll start giving clues probably from Monday. It's gone on for 11 days, including today. Can you tell us who this is?
This is your chance.
87222. If we get a right answer, we'll reveal all after the news at 3. Peter is in Somerset. How are you doing, Peter?
Very well indeed. Thank you, Ian.
Good.
Great show as usual.
Thank you, mate.
All right. Well, just a bit controversial, really, because I would really like our dear leader, Starmer, to stay in place.
OK. Any reason?
Yeah. Yeah, I do, because I'd like to see a civil war break out between the Corbyn side and the Blair side,
yes.
and the party eat itself alive in front of us.
I kind of,
yeah. He's still at the dispatch box, and we can still see him squirming and squirming, which I love to see.
I kind of share that view. I was thinking this morning. I was talking to a couple of guys about it earlier today. You know, we almost want him to remain. Because, you know, somebody else might come along, and even if they're also a bit rubbish, but they might be kind of a clean broom, and that they might start to look vaguely credible. Not that most of us would still vote for them, but they could, you know, they won't be Starmer, so they won't have all the U-turns to contend with.
Correct. And the other thing is, of course, don't forget, you won't get a general election anytime soon with a new Labour leader.
No.
But if they go into complete turmoil and absolutely start tearing themselves apart, there'll be by-elections, people resigning, and that's one way to actually start it. And the other thing is, I think we're forgetting that Blair was put in... Starmer was put in place by Blair.
Yeah.
So he's got some pretty strong backing behind him, and anybody else would have gone before now, but you know he's being told to hang on in there because there's a plan, and the last thing they want to do is the hard left to take power. So I think there's every possibility that they could self-destruct. And when they do self-destruct or start to tear themselves apart, more by-elections, more chances for reform, Tory, you name it, and it becomes unsettling. So, yep, controversial, but
No, I hear it, and it's the popcorn is at the ready now on a weekly basis to see what the next bumbling error might be. Peter, thank you very much indeed for that. Good call. Peter in Somerset. Yeah, we want keep Keir in situ, because if you did, there's not going to be a general election, by the way. That ain't going to happen till 2029. There might be an exceptional event, but May the 7th won't be an exceptional event. May the 7th is just, I think I'm right in saying, 13 weeks away. Right. It's about 13 weeks away, I think, May the 7th, which is extraordinary. And this could be an annihilation for the Labour Party in the local elections. And remember, these aren't just like a few councillors. There are a lot of councillors, would have been more until they cancelled some of them. A lot of councillors, a lot of mayoralties, the entirety of Wales and Scotland. This is huge. A proper kicking awaits Keir Starmer, maybe even the likes of which we have never seen in our life. Absolutely mental. So there's that, but that won't be enough to cause a general election. It might be enough to begin the ball rolling on people in the Labour Party who want to get rid of Keir Starmer. It might do that. But it won't be a general election. We were talking about theme parks earlier and how the people that run, what are they called, Merlin, that run Thorpe Park, Alton Towers and Legoland are no longer to be given the kind of speedy passes to kids with ADHD, autism and anxiety. I think largely because probably maybe there's too many of them. It might be. I'm not saying this I'm not trying to be smart. I think it might be that you have in mind that people get to the front of the queue because they might have an issue with walking or standing or something like that. Anxiety has become such a big thing that you can have half the queue complaining about it. So I'm assuming it's based on that. It might also be based on the fact that not everybody, because you can have sort of medical certification to show your ADHD or autism. But I think a lot of people probably just rocked up and went, oh, my kid's got ADHD. And then, of course, you're left, the theme park are left in that harrowing position of does somebody who works on the water chute turn around and go, no, sorry, I don't believe you. But really? That's not going to be a good look. Maybe it's sort of in all of that. But anyway, one here, no name given, says, Mr. Collins, you do not understand how anxious I get taking my kids to theme parks. Of course I need to get to the front of all queues, just to shut up the little satans known as my kids. Have some heart. It's a very good point. That thing at Legoland, what's that flying carpet thing called, Sam? It's the thing, you're on a kind of journey and mythical something or other. Mythical malarkey, that's it. Anyway, mythical malarkey, and the queue is also, it's an amazing, sort of like an experience rather than a ride. It is incredible. The technology behind it is superb, but it is the one with the biggest queue. So unless you've got those speedy passes, which you pay, it's like paying again, isn't it? Unless you've got those, be prepared to be in for the long haul. If you have a child who genuinely has something like ADHD or autism, where, hanging around, standing still is like really not an option, then that is genuinely problematic. I think what that last texter is saying, though, is that any kid is problematic when in a queue at a theme park. Of course they are. 0344 499 1000. That's where you will find us. I'll do some more messages on that in a few moments too. We'll come back to the Starmer question. Very simply, should Keir Starmer resign? Chagos Island's back on the agenda. And the voice of doom, who is this?
This is your chance.
87222 if you think you know. Right now the time is 3 o'clock. Right here on Talk. Let's get the latest news headlines.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yes, welcome back. It is the home of common sense. Loads to talk about. We'll continue talking about Keir Starmer. Apparently he was given no cause to disbelieve Lord Mandelson. None whatsoever. It was actually on the internet, but anyway, he had no cause to believe that a man that stayed at a man's house while he was in jail for child sex offences, that was apparently not a reason to block him becoming the ambassador. And Starmer was kind of pincer-moved into the whole thing by his head honcho, Morgan McSweeney. That is a real person, not a Dickens character. Morgan McSweeney is the man. He's going to walk the plank, but will Starmer be gone by 4? And if not, should he resign? We'll continue to take your calls on that. Also this afternoon, Rupert Lowe's independent rape gang inquiry currently ongoing. Started 3 days ago. It's going on for 10 days in total with the intention of looking for justice and certainly exposing some of the things that the establishment simply didn't get anywhere near. And Donald Trump apparently expected to now approve Keir Starmer's Chagos deal after the PM offered him security guarantees. He's flip-flopping over there at the Oval Office. What are the implications there? Lines are open, 0344 499 1000. Loads of messages coming in from you. There's one from Debbie, because we were talking about the Legoland and Thorpe Park and the other one. Getting rid of the kind of speedy access if you've got ADHD or anxiety. Debbie says, I love the fact that Merlin have stopped giving disabled tickets to non-disabled people. My daughter has severe learning difficulties. I don't ask for one for her. I take her at quiet times and want her to learn to queue because it helps her in future life. And if she's British, of course, it's compulsory. So I get it. Debbie, thank you very much indeed for that. Now, let's speak about the Tories. There's a lot to be said about the Tories. I think Kemi Baden, I think she's having a fairly good run at the moment. They have been all over the place at times, but they've got a few years to come before the general election. Can they pick themselves up? Clark Vasey is with us, Director of Blue Collar Conservatism. Clark, good to see you.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
Blue Collar Conservatism, just explain for the uninitiated.
So, I mean, it was something I set up with Esther McVeigh, who is one of our leading lights in the Conservative movement back in 2012. Pretty much on the idea of, working class voters were moving towards the Conservatives. It happened in 2010, despite David Cameron's big push towards middle class Liberals, which were largely unsuccessful in getting in large numbers and obviously missed out on a majority. So we started back in 2012 to say, look, these are the voters, we share their values, we can deliver for them. It's probably these groups that are the heart of the disappointment that's been felt by a lot of Conservatives over the last few years. These voters did move in big numbers towards the Conservatives, but largely felt let down, and they are predominantly there in the reform surge.
Indeed, and I mean, Labour always talk about, we are the party of the working classes, and I understand the initiation, the history of Labour and how it all began when, if you were a Tory, you had to own half of Kent and the like, and that's, you were the ennobled kind of classes. Hence the Labour Party comes along, fantastic for democracy, I get it. However, it should always be acknowledged, Margaret Thatcher got into power because of the working class vote, right? I mean, she was there because she was supported by, Mondeo Man or whatever it was called. Was that under her? I think it was. Just ordinary people who wanted self-responsibility, small government, get on with life, work hard. You want your kids to have a better life than the one you had, just all the usuals. I think that is the working class story, isn't it?
I think that's exactly where it is, but the point that we've made over the past few years with Blue Collar is that group has been growing. So more and more kind of hard-working Brits have been moving away from this whole idea about the state dependency, which has been where the Labour Party is. Because you talk about them being the party of the working class. That's entirely historic at this point. Labour, if you look at their support, their highest support group is with the top socio-economic groups. It dips right down and then creates this U shape when you come back to the people who are workless.
Yeah.
If you look at what they're doing, that gives a clue to the sort of their agenda.
Does it? Where are you from, Clark?
Originally from Carlisle.
Okay. I identified that region. Esther McVey is just up the road from there, of course, that's her region.
Well, down the road from Carl.
Sorry, down the road.
But very much the northwest.
You're northwesterners.
Yes.
Not an area that always... I know Cheshire is a bit Tory, but, you know, they're not regions, certainly when you get into Liverpool, that are historically conservative.
No, I mean, growing up, you know, Carlisle was a solidly Labour town. You know, my father worked in the biscuit factory, fixing machines there. Once lost the tips of his fingers in one of the machines. He gave a claw to the day he died because he didn't quite get the nails bent. Look, there's a real side point you weren't expecting.
That's great. Your dad had a claw?
Yes, it was like a claw because he had really bad gout. And he had like a claw until the day he died. So, you know, it was, but you know, I was brought up to think, you know, not reliant on the state. You know, get a job. Get that, you know, that kind of dignity that comes from work. Because there is a dignity in every job. You get people like Zach Polanski talking down care home workers. I've got a 19-year-old niece who works in a care home. You know, she didn't come out of school with the qualification she might have liked, but she's getting on there, seeing that progression from having a job.
Yeah. What can the Tories do then? Because we were talking about this earlier in the office. They could end up come the next election, and I know they're always going to have this thing around their neck, you know, the last 14 years. By the way, I slightly resent this 14-year number. You can't do anything about it now because it's out the traps. For 40, it wasn't like this for 40. 5 of those years was a coalition, of course, so there was that, and then, of course, there was, you know, the Brexit vote, and then there was COVID, etc. Nonetheless, they can't really get away from that. But it is possible that Kemi Badenoch could carve the Conservatives out to be the common sense, sensible choice. We got Reform over there, they're arguing, there's a few weirdos, got the Labour over there, they're arguing, a few weirdos, Jeremy Corbyn. Actually, we're the sensible, we're the same ones.
I think that's absolutely right, but one thing that we, as Conservatives, have to do, we have to look and say, right, there's something that's facing us right now that's really hard and difficult, and that is, if the Conservatives to get back to power, they have to take votes in large numbers off reform. Yeah. You know, right now it looks really a really daunting task, but it can be done. You know, I think once, you know, in my view, if I had the finger on what the Conservative Party was going to do, I'd match reform on migration, because it's largely a settled issue in the country. They're reflecting where the people are. And once you've played that card, I think the Conservatives have got a much better hand than the Reform Party. Yeah.
Do you think Kemi Badenoch is the person to lead the Tories then into 2020?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, I listened to her this morning. I went over to her press conference. You know, she's the one scoring runs against the government. I mean, they're making it quite easy with what's going on with Peter Mandelson. Yeah. But you know, I think if we start to get back to, you know, how can we deliver? How can we make this country work for working people? Because right now, millions of people up and down the country don't feel that it does. Yeah. Lots of worklessness, you know, young people, nearly 1 million young people not in education, employment or training. You know, getting these kids into work should be an absolute top mission of the Conservative Party, creating taxpayers, not dependents.
One of the, this isn't new news to you, but one of the comments that regularly comes through, of course, from mostly Reform voters is that there's not a cigarette paper you can put between Labour and the Tories. You're this silly phrase, uni-party, but I understand why it's used. And I'm sure you guys understand why it's used. But what is the way back from that? Because Reform's position, you know, that phrase, you know, we are none of the above, has never been more kind of relevant and profound as it is right now with Reform. That is their line, isn't it? We're not that lot.
I think, look, you know, if you look back to some of the last, you know, there's got to be facing up to what happened that wasn't quite right under the Conservatives in power, and some of it was, you know, kind of serious mistakes. And there probably was times when there wasn't that gap that there should have been between the Labour Party and the Conservative Party. You know, we failed on issues like migration. You know, we didn't deliver in areas which we promised people that we would. Yeah. But I think we're in a very different place now. I think there is a recognition that, you know, we have got to be looking at, you know, kind of get into a kind of almost a leaner, more practical conservatism, which, you know, accepts things like Reform don't face up to, like the, you know, the kind of the uni-party that they criticise, and that is that, you know, the state's been living beyond its means for years and years and years, and we're making these promises to people that spending is going to be able to continue the way that it is. And Reform have jumped onto that uniparty bandwagon, if they want to use their terminology.
Yeah.
We've got to be the grown-ups in the room that says, yeah, we do have to accept where we got this really wrong in the past, but we've got to deliver now. And to me, that's a relentless focus on creating conditions for job creation, because if you get someone into a job, you not only are you delivering that economic benefit, but all the social benefits that come with it as well.
Yeah.
If you're out of work, you're sitting idle. This isn't, you were talking about some of the mental health issues before we came on. Being sat at home all day, is that really going to make those kind of issues
It's
better?
horrendous for you, isn't it? But how does it... Because I've often wondered this. We're all armchair prime ministers, aren't we? We all go, well, if I was in power, I'd do this. And I've spoken to enough of these guys to know that even if you're not the prime minister, but a senior position in cabinet, you go in with these great ideas, and you're kind of pretty much taken into a room, and a load of blokes in grey suits go, right, that list you gave me, it's in the shredder, because you can't do that, you can't do this, you can't do... There might be some truth in some of that, or certainly truth that people in the civil service might tell politicians what they can and can't do. But getting things done in government, substantial things, is like turning an oil tanker around, isn't it?
I think, look, the experience of the last couple of governments is that is very much the case. But it requires our politicians to be more decisive and to have the guts to push these things through. I think the Conservative Party, a lot of its failings in the past did fall that we fell into that kind of category of managerialism, that we just want, more competent managers than the other side, everything will be somehow fine.
Yeah.
There is a lot that needs to be changed, and if we are going to get this country into a place which really genuinely works for working people, we are going to need to be able to go in and challenge some of those oh, well, you can't do this, government.
But there's got to be those, those sort of tipping point moments where just something happens and it's kind of, it becomes irredeemable, that you've caught the imagination of a nation, either with a policy or a moment. If Kemi Badenoch took the scalp of the Prime Minister in the next 6 days, then straight away, it's a game of snakes and ladders. She's gone right up that big old ladder, the one that goes to 97. She's right up there. You've got to keep those, you've got to have those moments, haven't you? There's a bit of luck involved in that, I suppose, along the way, but there has to be a kind of philosophical template or a plan, doesn't it? It's got to be more than just, well, we want more people in work, or we would like you to be, considering us for immigration. It's got to be something more tangible.
There's got to be something that requires a joint.
By the way, I don't know what that is.
Well, look, I've written on Conservative Home today, touching on some of this, and one of the things I talk about is that we've had lots of things like industrial strategies over the years, and they tend to just gather dust on someone's shelves. Most of this information that's in them is available commercially anyway. Whereas what I talk about is today's on Conservative Home is looking at something like a labour market strategy, because actually immigration at the levels that we've had is largely a failure of our labour market strategy. How do we get kind of British people into jobs where we're not required to, we don't have enough people to do this, let's pull the lever and bring in some low skilled migrants, which we now know isn't an economic benefit to the country.
I mean, there's a good example, isn't it? And this keeps me awake at night, to be honest, Clark, because I keep thinking, right, we can do a lot in the world today, got a lot of technology, whether it's space travel, whether it's our phones and the apps and AI, I mean, just doing just incredible things. But we can't stop a load of blokes coming over the channel in a rubber boat.
No.
That's extraordinary to me. I mean, it's almost like I'm in a Charlie Brooker upside down world TV show and Truman Show style, where someone's going to tap me on the shoulder and go, ha ha, it's over, you fell for it. Well, we thought we got you when we did the boat thing, That's how I'm sort of feeling on this. But it's very real, and nobody seems to be able to solve it. And we heard that now the Home Secretary has said, I can't guarantee I'm going to stop there's going to be fewer boats in the next year or so. And somebody, I know Rwanda was sort of floating around in the last government, not sure it was perfect. Haven't the Tories got to come up with, like, wow, the one nobody thought about? And this is like, we won't match reform, as you alluded to at the beginning. We will completely bulldoze them on this one. This is what's going to happen. There's an island there. It's just off Scotland. We don't want anybody to be in distress. We don't want anybody to be cold and hungry. We're civilised people, but that's where you're going to go, I'm afraid.
Well, I mean, 3% of the landmass of Cyprus is British sovereign territory, and the bases don't take up a lot of it. So there is actually quite... There you go.
Between us, we've solved this.
Send them back to, if they've come up from the Southern Europe, send them back to Southern Europe, house them in tents.
And
like
there
the
is
Greeks
a place,
do.
yeah.
So there has to be... kind of a plan to deal with that. But at the same time, they have to deal with, kind of very high levels of legal migration at the moment, because it is a scandal, the number of people who are coming into the UK illegally. But legal migration is the ones that kind of placing a lot of the pressures on our towns, on our cities. Young people are struggling to get into work. If you take something like the building trade, a third of builders are over the age of 50. Why are we not getting kind of this group of nearly 1 million young people into that trade? HGV drivers, it's even higher, over 55%.
What's going? Because when I was at school, when I was a kid, that was kind of like a couple of the mates became builders, and my uncle was a builder, and his kids were as well. That was quite a respected job.
Yeah, my uncles were all worked in the building trade up in Carlisle, and they've been they predominantly voted to leave the EU in kind of 2016 because they'd seen downward pressure on their wages. It doesn't matter how much the Remain campaign lectured them about the economy, their wages had gone down because of the free movement of people. It wasn't about so much immigration, it was more about what they were taking home, and that's still continuing to this day with looking right across the kind of unskilled migration. We're taking out entry-level jobs because all this thing about we needed people to go to university, and the Tories started to get the balance going in the right direction into apprenticeships, but there's still a cohort of young people who aren't going to go into either of those categories.
Yeah, true.
What about them? Why are we saying, will this person come in legally, and if they're prepared to work, it's great, but if they're displacing a young person out of the labour market, there's a missed opportunity.
So are the working classes, particularly the young working class guys, are they the sort of target audience that you guys are looking to?
Well, I mean,
is that the area? Because we've already got a very working class Prime Minister, of course. I don't know if you probably don't know this, Clark. Can I give you some breaking news?
Yeah, I do.
Keir Starmer was the son of a toolmaker. There you go.
You coloured me surprised.
I know. It's you didn't expect that kind of factoid when you walked in here. He's walking around the place. I think he did it again this morning, didn't he, in Sussex, going, I'm a working class boy. I'm not quite sure about his status in that respect, if that's the argument people want to have. But the working class thing, is that the important kind of cohort to Labour, to the Conservatives? Yeah,
so I'd say, look, if you look at the polling, a lot of it is now going to reform, but across kind of social groups C2, D, E, more than 50% of the support now leans towards the two right of centre parties. That was where the opportunity for the Conservative Party was.
Sure.
If they'd listened to Blue Collar and me and Esther back in the day, we could have had an orderly realignment, and the place would be in a very different place potentially. But it is about sort of, these are the people who are the great mass of working Britain. They do the right thing. They just want to get on lives, raise their kids, just do all the things that we have done with younger people, and people worried about their grandkids, because don't forget, a lot of these people who will have gone neat, these are the grandkids and the kids of the people who voted Brexit.
Correct.
They voted Brexit because the country didn't work, and now it's not working for the next generation.
I'm deeply fascinated. Just a final point on the class thing. I've noticed, I mentioned this, I feel in my industry, I'm a rarity as a working class kid doing this job. I mean, I'm sure you know that. I mean, it's very, very rare to find someone from a proper, council house worker who does this job. What I've noticed, however, Keir Starmer, he doesn't stop talking about being a working class son of a toolmaker and all that business. I have noticed there's a by-election coming up soon. Obviously, we can't talk about it too much because we'd have to talk about all the candidates. But I noticed they're having a bit of a class off in that. Have you spotted that? You've got one candidate saying, I'm more working class. It's almost going Monty Python-esque. We used to live in a shoebox, there's all of that stuff. You said your dad worked in a biscuit factory.
He did, yes.
Yeah. Which one? I mean,
his Carr's biscuit factory in Carlisle.
Okay. So you must have had the envious lunchbox at school, did you?
Well, every now and again he would come back with these big bags of biscuits that weren't even biscuits that were on shelves in the UK.
Wow.
They were like
bits of biscuits.
These old biscuits that I used to just sell to the staff. So we'd buy a big bag for £1. So I used to with collector's cards as well. So I had all these envious collection of things made for completely of a market. But look, this is for people like you and me, it's where we come from.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the things that's disappointing about people like Keir Starmer is that they've forgotten that. They talk about it, but they're not delivering for that. You go back to that Labour support being that kind of U shape. And so that's their strategy.
Yeah.
It's dependency at one end, and kind of all of these sops to kind of the posher end of the market, like the kind of blatant kind of cap in hand to the European Union. That's where they're at. There's very little in the middle, but that's where the work is done.
Indeed. Clark, great to see you.
Thank you.
By the way, my dad was a painter and decorator, so we had a lot of paint at home. We had no biscuits, just paint, which was not quite as exciting as your big bag of biscuits. There's something more about that, isn't there? Biscuit. I had to go. My school lunchbox had Dulux in it, so it wasn't anywhere near as.
Well, it's probably more useful in later life.
Exactly.
My addiction to biscuits isn't so good at my age. But being able to put up some paint is.
But great to see you, Clark. We will speak again, I hope, as well. Clark Vasey, Director of Blue Collar Conservatism, with us on the programme. Thank you to him. Over to you again in a few moments. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Hello and welcome to Talk Down the Local. Tonight we're at McCafferty's in Epsom in Surrey.
Raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of this desperation. I think it's almost a plea for help.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Suits, and that's about it. Actually, I quite like Suits.
People coming to the pub and drinking 0% alcoholic drinks, they're still coming to the pub and doing trade.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going, but I have 0% beers and I feel
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, good afternoon. It is Talk 3. Is where you'll that's the time. The number you need is where you'll find us is 0344 499 1000. I've got so many numbers and so many messages in my inbox and my head. I don't even know which way round I am this morning. This afternoon, is it? Ian is down in London. We will do the Voice of Doom as well shortly. Ian, what have you got for us? Hi, thanks for hanging on.
That's all right. In your inbox on messages, you've got one for me as well. I think that caller earlier on meant Tulip Sadiq, not Sadiq Khan.
Oh, I see. Yes. That's a very good point. Yes.
That
Tulip
was on
Sadiq.
that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good point.
Sorry.
No, good point.
No, that was on that. With Starmer, this goes back to when we spoke. I'd spent fortunes of an evening with you talking with all of this. Years ago, when we first spoke after the election, if he had an election now, it would be an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
Because quite truthfully, as you've said, and I think some of your guests have done, the right have got to become one. Because as it stands at the moment, with all the sort of squabbling that goes on, the left would be in party or in power with Labour, Sultana and Corbyn, the Green Party and the Lib Dems. And it'll be even worse. Really, you've got the same situation in France. Was it last year?
Yeah.
Where Marine Le Pen's party had the most votes, but all the others got together with the bigger party, and when they came in, it was a complete nightmare.
Yeah.
So that's on that sort of side. And as for Starmer, yeah, he's just sort of sitting there thinking with his pension and everything else, he'll just see it through because he knows there's nobody else that can do anything.
Do you think... And again, it's always a bit tricky to... No, I was just going to say, and do you think it's trying to analyse the kind of character of a politician is always tricky? I don't... And, of course, ego is the thing that drives all of them, left or right. But in the sense of Starmer, I don't dispute that, you know, his kids think he's a great guy, and so do his friends. And I'm sure he has, you know, some lovely ideas about how life should run when he was a lawyer and all the rest of it. What's fundamentally the problem with him? I mean, is it
the problem?
Is it a lack of? Is it the error of judgment, which is, you know, a pretty vast and ongoing problem for him?
Right. Let's look at it like two ways very quickly. Error of judgment. This is a guy who's married to a Jewish lady. Supposedly his kids are brought up with on the Jewish religion, and yet he backed Corbyn.
Yeah.
I knew what Corbyn was all about. So if you talk about error of judgment, like and as soon as when he was my best pal, the same as Corbyn said that terrorists were his best pals, and as soon as he was out, in and everything else, he slung him out, and he's turning around to Beth Rigby on Sky. Oh yeah, I didn't really sort of like him, but why didn't you say something?
Yeah.
Why didn't you say so at the time? It's like even now, and I cannot believe it's been really put to the back burner, the story about the policewoman whose back was broken and she got out, they got let off. How can that be?
But that isn't Starmer's fault, right?
Well, no, it is, because basically, if he'd have come out all the way through that this is a terrorist organisation, this is what's happened there, this should not be allowed, and really clamp down, whether it's on Khan, which allowed the pro-Palestinian marches and everything else.
I'd agree with that. But of course, they are the Labour Party, so they don't see things in quite that way. All I would say on the other thing, and I can't broadcast too much about this, but there are other elements, I think, still to come in that story. Let's put it that way.
But can I just say one last thing?
Yeah, go for it,
One last thing. Yeah? The Labour Party was made up who by initially? Which was the sort of majority of the people that joined it? It was all Jewish people. The original Labour Party was majority was people that did like the same as the kibbutzes in Israel. It was the Labour, the Jewish people that sort of started it, and now they're the ones that are being thrown out by them.
Interesting point to finish on. Ian, thank you very much indeed for that. 0344 499 1000. John says, my mum worked in a loo roll factory. Pretty useless, I guess. She did latterly work in a chocolate factory, which was much better. We were talking about you. Like what one of your parents did for a living depends on what you got. I did have a mate, it was like at Cubs, whose dad worked for Mars. I could not believe it when, it was like flipping Willy Wonka's house going around there. I mean, his garage was full of... As a kid, I just thought, look at that, it's amazing. It's only as an adult you go, well, he obviously nicked that from work. Must have done. There was Mars bars and Twixes and whatever else. It was absolutely incredible. So my dad had tins of paint. Our last guest, Clark, they had biscuits. Lovely one there. Lou roll would be good, says John, but working in a chocolate factory, amazing. Of course, most of us don't work anywhere where you can bring something home necessarily for your kids or your family. And I'm pretty sure, I mean, if you work at the Tower of London, I guess that's a sort of tempting scenario, but, you know, a lot of jail time. Let's do the Voice of Doom. Have we got a winner, finally, on the Voice of Doom? It's day 11. This is the voice we've been playing you.
This is your chance.
These are some of the guesses. Richard Tice. I can kind of see why somebody might say Richard Tice. Francis Maud, no. Jeffrey Archer, no. Ian Duncan Smith, Julian Brazier, Kenneth Baker, Les Patterson, Morgan McSweeney, Damien Green, John Whitby, Jacob Rees-Mogg, Willie Whitelaw, Cecil Parkinson, no. None of those. Let's hear it again.
This is your chance.
Somebody said Dennis Skinner. How can that be Dennis Skinner? Seriously, man, what's wrong with you? It's not Dennis Skinner either. We haven't got a winner. It's back tomorrow, 3:45, right here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Darren in South East London says Mandelson is a goat, the greatest of all traitors. Great show as usual. Keep up the good work. Darren, thank you very much indeed for that. He certainly is. Paul says the big problem we now have is if Starmer goes, what clown comes next? Yeah, you see, it could be, I mean, if it's a Rayner character. It's quite funny how political parties, Tory but particularly Labour, like the idea that there's a significant amount of Labour supporters that want Ed Miliband as their leader. You think, well, even if you liked Ed Miliband, wouldn't you go, well, the man is clearly unelectable, well, demonstrably unelectable, because he tried and didn't win. But he's just unelectable, he's just not very good. He looks like a half-wit, and, you know, when I say look, as in looks as a politician, I'm not visually shaming him in that respect, although he is a bit Wallace and Gromity, as we've, I think, long established. Crazy. A bit like the Tories when Ian Duncan Smith, who was a great speaker but not a great leader, but they couldn't resist themselves. Interesting times over there at Labour HQ. What about this story? Schoolgirls at a secondary in South Wales will be banned from wearing skirts under a new equality-driven uniform policy. From September, the school in Bridgend will require all pupils to wear trousers. The school says it's about practicality and fairness. Let's speak to Candice Holdsworth, writer and broadcaster and skirt wearer of some note, it should be said. Candice, look, I think it's all about choice, isn't it? But to not be allowed to wear a skirt? What on earth's going on?
Yeah, I mean, this is just wokeness gone mad. I know I sound like a ranting Daily Mail reader, but that's exactly what I am. Yeah, they've been doing this for years. So it was in Bristol a few years ago. There was another school that caused an outcry by introducing a gender-neutral school uniform policy, which essentially meant that the stuff that the girls like to wear, like skirts, were just erased. And this is exactly what happens whenever you talk about gender neutrality, because it's never gender neutral. It's actually always ends up that the girls look more like the boys, because it's always things like skirts, pink, long hair, all of that gets rejected.
Yeah.
And I think it gives girls the message at a very key developmental stage, actually, that there's something wrong with things that girls like, you know, like pink stinks and that sort of thing. And I think a lot of feminists sometimes unwittingly give their daughters that message when they don't like them playing with Barbies and they don't like them wearing pink tutus and things like that. All the stuff that girls love to do, by the way. And it's just a form of social engineering that doesn't work, because we all know, if any of us who've had children know that girls are drawn to certain things and boys are drawn to certain things. I mean, I remember when I was at school, they completely relaxed the school uniform rules, and they said that the girls could wear the boys' uniform if they wanted.
Yeah.
And so on some days they would. Sometimes girls would wear trousers, but a lot of days they would choose to wear skirts. Of course, not one single boy came to school wearing a skirt, but that's just the way that boys and girls are, and it would have been unrealistic to expect otherwise.
Yeah, I was at school, and I think this has continued a little bit into adulthood. Certainly at school, I was always envious of girls. I thought that girls, it wasn't the fact that they had much more, they could do much more with their hair, they could do much more if they wore makeup and stuff, they could do all of that. What I was actually envious of, Candice, as a young teenage schoolboy, was the sheer power that girls had. It was power, nothing more than that. They carried all the cards at that time of life, and of course a 14-year-old girl is not interested in a 14-year-old boy. She'd rather be dating a 15 or a 16-year-old boy, sometimes older, as it turned out. But yeah, I thought girls had great power. So, and I don't, with power comes great responsibility, and great responsibility comes skirts. So I think it's only reasonable that you give girls a choice, right?
Yes, but do you know what's going on in the heads of girls that age?
Yeah.
They're feeling just as unsure of themselves, trying to figure boys out, have no idea that they have that kind of power. That sort of comes a bit later when girls are more mature. And I found it so interesting, the recent death of Brigitte Bardot. I mean, she was a woman who discovered her true feminine power, and it was quite an awesome, terrifying thing. And the French society at the time, which was quite a religious, conservative society, did not like it and tried very, very hard to suppress it. But I think that, as a culture, we go through phases like that, right? Where like ultra femininity is celebrated, and then maybe there are times when people want to do stuff that's maybe a bit more edgy. But I think that we should just leave it to people to decide, and leave it to the kids to decide, because they are going through that experimental phase when they're teenagers. Yeah. They're sort of figuring out how they are. They're starting to become attracted to the opposite sex. All those things. Just let it happen naturally. I just feel like adults are just getting too involved in the lives of teenagers and controlling them too much. And I think what we're storing up for the future is a massive rebellion.
Do you think that's on its way, a rebellion of the next generation or something, Candice?
I think so. I think that there's so much of it. I mean, with the social media ban as well, rather than parents thinking, okay, we'll help kids navigate that, which is exactly what you should be doing as a parent. It's just shut it down. I mean, I encounter it all the time. I think that there's a lot of over-parenting going on. We are going through a phase of helicopter parenting, and we're sort of not, we forget that the teenage years are such an important developmental phase. They are an experimental phase. It is when kids start forming relationships with each other, maybe start experimenting sexually, maybe starting to wear short skirts and stuff, and that kind of thing. And it's normal, and we have to let them just get on with it. But I think nowadays there is, in our safety-obsessed culture, we shut it down. And we're sort of trying to keep them as permanent children, but it's not going to work. After the 1950s, that's why there was that huge rebellion in the 1960s, because I think kids felt very constrained, excessively constrained by their parents.
Yeah, it's a kind of balance, that, isn't it? I've got a friend who, two of his kids have been through school. One of them is, just starting out in secondary school. He's got a very liberal view. He hates the idea of school. He's American, so maybe that slightly informs his views. But he thinks that school uniform is not just the wrong thing, but almost counterproductive. He thinks it's terrible. Whereas I I love all that uniformity. I want us to be back. I'm sorry to disagree on this point, Candice. I want it to be the 1950s. I want rigidity, uniformity, strictness. I want the flipping cane. I want the slipper. I want everything back. No, I don't. Not quite, because that last bit never really worked. But I do like the idea that you can learn something from a certain level of uniformity, and that includes wearing the uniform. But he says, no, it has the very opposite effect, and believes that there's a certain... that the more liberal approach is actually more healthy for kids.
Well, for me, look, so personally, I do like a school uniform because I think it's a leveler. I think that, you know, especially for kids who maybe can't afford designer clothes, and all these things can become important when you're a teenager. It's just better that everyone can wear the school uniform. And I would say if you're going to have school uniform, you should have rules. You know, you can specify to girls, and that's what it was like when I was at school. You can say you should not wear your skirt needs to be a certain length, and I think it's totally fine to say that.
Yeah.
And, you know, make sure kids take pride in their uniform. And I think that that's something very that was always in the British educational tradition, and I think it's really, really important, and I'm totally for that. I think it's always a mix, right, of, you know, sort of letting go, tightening up, letting go, tightening up. You're navigating, you're helping kids navigate the world. I don't think you should shut everything down and ban everything, but at the same time, you have to provide that structure. And I say this, and I know as a parent, it is really, really hard to find that balance. It is not easy.
Just a final point on skirts themselves, and I've never understood. I saw it yesterday when I came off the train. So it's not just school kids or school girls, it's just all girls in general. What's the deal with wearing the shortest possible skirt and then walking down the road constantly sort of pulling it down? What's that all about? Just wear a longer bloody skirt. I mean, what's the deal there?
Well, the thing is when I was younger, you were really told off for that. I mean, I do think so. I think, look, I mean, there's nothing wrong with, I don't think anyone should feel ashamed for wanting to wear a shorter skirt. But I do think, I mean, there is a certain level of taste and decency. And I think, you know, you should be able to tell a young girl that, like, no, you shouldn't be walking down the street with your bum showing,
yes,
you know.
I get that. Listen, Candice, great to have you on as ever. Nice to see you again as well. Candice Holdsworth, writer and broadcaster on that specific issue. One in from B in West Sussex. Says Ian, reference the girls and the trousers. As a mum of 2 girls and a boy, I will be interested to know their reasoning. Is it that most girls or parents can't adhere to the rules in which they agreed to when signing their child up to school, thus being uniform? Length of skirts being one of those, not only for modesty but also to not put teachers in different unfair situations. If a child can't adhere to a simple uniform rule, we wonder why they won't or don't adhere to other rules. Stop pushing boundaries and we might be less dictated to. B, yes, and thank you for your nice comments. That's a very good point. There was that era, you know, girls trying to make them as short as possible. I can remember the head teacher shouting at one girl right in the assembly room, in an assembly in the hall after assembly, pull your skirt down, and then he said her surname. And then he told her off for walking in a slovenly fashion. But that became a bit of a thing. Make your skirt as short as you can, and then they get told off for that. And then I think there was a point of making your skirts knee length became kind of quite cool for a bit. Look, you should be able to wear whatever you want, shouldn't you? Having a strict rule against it is a bit weird. Chris is in Derby. Back to Keir Starmer, who doesn't wear a skirt, not that I know of. Chris, what have you got for us? Afternoon to you.
Hi, Ian.
Hello.
Mandelson probably did.
Yeah.
But it's not. He said in a statement that he was sorry. He was sorry for what was done to you, the men and women, girls and boys, and he said sorry that so many people in power failed you, but he didn't apologise for his actions. He blamed it on so many other people in power. He didn't say that I was in power and put this bloke Mandelson in a high position.
Yeah.
So he's not actually really apologised. He's apologised and blamed it on to other people.
Yes, he has. He's kind of saying I was given false information. But as the Prime Minister, you can't do that, can you?
No, I don't believe he can. No, you should be able to.
Yes, the buck stops with you. And if your Chief of Staff told you, go on, give him the job, even though we know he could be a wrong 'un, or certainly, even if even if he's not a wrong and in that sense, but I mean, the fact that he made terrible errors of judgment, possibly breached secrets, maybe they didn't know that bit at the time, that's fine. But the other stuff they did know, and they still gave him the job. That's down to Keir Starmer, right?
Absolutely. Blatantly, the book stands with, it stays
completely.
with him, and he's not actually apologised for employing him with that massive position. He's apologised for not believing the lies.
Yeah.
Well,
that's absolutely right. I didn't. I love it. Chris, good analysis. Thank you very much indeed for that. Brad in Cambridge. Whilst I absolutely agree with what you were saying about Kemi is improving a lot, we do need to remember that she is getting a hell of a lot of help from Starmer and the Labour Party. And that's really what happened with Starmer, isn't it? He got a lot of help from the Conservative Party. They didn't really have, there was no great kind of Starmer-y, Labour-y policy that you could go. They didn't have a great campaign. Posters, online stuff wasn't brilliant. My 10-year-old could have got them elected. I've always said this. But they weren't the Tories. So that's how they kind of got in. But I guess that happens a lot. They often say that opposition parties don't win elections, governments lose them. And I think that's largely true. So when you look at it now and you think, what did Starmer come in with? What was the big idea? What was the big moment when you thought, wow, Starmer, he's going to do this or that? There was one or two things, but nothing great, no grand plan. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Every Monday to Wednesday, midnight until 1, it is Talkback.
Such a shortage of housing. You've got landlords, right, have taken that on board, and it's an absolute disgrace.
Your stories, your opinions, it is your chance to have your say. So they're literally just being rented out as hotels, basically.
Yeah, rent a load of hotels.
Well, that has really shone a light for me.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Kevin O'Sullivan will be here at 4, but he's going to nip in before then to tell us what is going on. Let's talk to Matthew in Warrington. What do you got, Matthew? Hi.
Hi, mate. Just a quick one.
Yeah.
First and foremost, your numbers have gone up and your listeners have gone up because every single show on Talk is outstanding. All you presenters are absolutely brilliant. You're there for the...
Do you know what? I think some of them are a bit wobbly, some of the others, frankly.
Well, Jezza could be a bit dodgy, but...
Yeah, I mean, Jezza, Julia's getting on a bit now, you know.
No, but, mate, honestly, Talk is... You're all brilliant. I listen to you from 5 o'clock in the morning till when I get home, and then when I'm in the kitchen, I have it on in the background. So thank you.
Thank you, Matthew.
Yeah,
no, appreciate it.
Keir Starmer is the biggest liar we've ever met. As a barrister and a man of law, he's terrible. He's good job he's not Pinocchio. But what I'd like to see now is some of them front benchers resigning in disgust of what he's done, because he's a threat. He's a national threat to the security of this country. He's absolutely horrendous, and he will not stand down. He will not back down. He's got people telling him it's not his fault.
Yep.
And we are where we are because of his bad decisions.
It is quite bizarre that he was not just a barrister, Matthew, but a senior barrister, right? You know, right up there.
The top man. The top man. And all he stood for was liars. He couldn't even get Jimmy Savile. The Sex Pistols were talking about Jimmy Savile on 76 on radio. It's on YouTube. You can hear him going.
Yeah, I know. It's a famous John Lydon talking on TV, isn't there, about Savile? I think the problem with Savile is that everybody heard a bit and kind of suspected and knew he was a wrong 'un, but you know, thinking it and wondering it and proving it are two different things.
Yeah.
You know, building a case is the tricky one, but I get it. Matthew, great call, and thanks for your nice comments as well. Really appreciate that. This is Dave down in London on Mandelson. What are you thinking, Dave?
Hi, Ian. How are you?
Hi, good as gold. What's happening?
I reckon the last caller must be a relative of yours, I think. Is that
It was actually my dad, yeah. I should have said.
Ian, I remember distinctly when Mandelson was appointed, and I thought to myself, oh, not this guy again. But I remember...
Forgotten all about him.
And I remember, but maybe I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the existing US ambassador, I can't remember if it was a he or a she from the previous Conservatives or whatever, but the American administration were over the moon with that particular ambassador. That they were saying, we don't have a problem with the current ambassador. Why are you changing it?
Oh, with Mandelson, you mean?
Again, no. The person Mandelson took over from.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So because they tend yeah. Go on.
Yeah, because I think there's always a tricky, the Americans like them or they don't. But apparently the one before, they were over the moon with it. But so then you start thinking to yourself, okay, so when Starmer gets elected, Blair, Mandelson, Campbell, probably all of them, rubbing their hands with glee, thinking, great, jobs for the boys, move people out that are maybe good or not, put us all back in again.
Yeah.
And I think that for me is the bad judgment, because if you've got someone good in position already, why the hell don't you just leave them there, regardless of what their persuasion is?
It's kind of weird that, they often change them politically, don't they? So, I mean, certainly when the American ambassador to the UK, who has a nice residence down there in London, or down here in London, as we happen to sit, like if a Democrat got elected at the next election, they'd probably change the ambassador, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, but this didn't happen until about a year ago, right? So Starmer had been in office 8-9 months. Trump had been in office quite a long time.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you say you're operating for the country,
yep,
and you've got a good ambassador already, then your decision is why change what's not broken? I'll leave them there, and I'll worry about other things. But no, I'm going to take this bizarre personnel decision when I didn't even need to do it in the first
Yeah,
place.
it's a good point. Yeah, it was Dame Karen Elizabeth Pierce who was the American ambassador before Mandelson, and she did it for 5 years from 2020 to 2025. But whether that was because of the change of American administration or something else, I don't know. Listen, great call, Dave. Thank you very much indeed. And the new ambassador to the United States, for those who follow this, you might know, is a guy called Sir Christian Philip Hollier Turner, who's a British diplomat who served as a British ambassador to the United States since February 2026, following the dismissal of Lord Peter Mandelson, who's gone, of course. Gone but not forgotten, and not forgotten in a good way, not forgotten in a terrible way, frankly. And I don't think he's going to be forgotten for a long, long time. There's all sorts of theories as to, well, what does that mean in the long term? Where's he going to go? Will the police come knocking? Kevin O'Sullivan's here. Before we talk to Kev...
They can't come knocking. They just announced a criminal investigation. Of course they're going to knock.
Yeah, but they might announce it and then... There's nothing they can say.
They don't announce criminal investigations and then not carry them out. They're going to go knocking.
I was talking to a lawyer who said... They never
listen to lawyers. They never know what they're talking about.
All that stuff that's written, the memos that he sent, first thing his lawyer's going to go is, can I have them, please? And they're going to go...
well, they're in emails.
Where are the emails? Well, they're Epstein files.
Well, they got them. Yeah,
okay, so you've got a photocopy of the Epstein files in. Where's the actual email trail?
Yeah, well, that lawyer's going to lose the case.
That's the first thing they're going to do.
I'd rather be the prosecutor.
Because the bar is so high.
No, it's not. The prosecutor...
Kev, you forget I've been a senior judge.
No,
you haven't.
You haven't. And
I've worn the wig.
I have covered millions of cases.
Yeah, if you haven't got the evidence, you haven't got a case.
Every lawyer in the world would rather be the prosecutor than the defender of Peter Mandelson. Peter Mandelson is going down.
But I don't know whether that email is your smoking gun. There might be something else.
He's going down.
Listen,
he's going down.
Have you heard? I need to ask you this. Have you heard this?
Yeah.
Well, you can